Welcome back. Tonight, we're going somewhere colder than you'd ever want to be, through mountains higher than anyone from that time should have tried to cross, and into one of the most miserable sleep stories in human history. This isn't about warm Mediterranean nights or the golden light over Carthage. This is about snow, frost, and men shivering beneath layers of animal hide as they follow one of the most daring commanders who ever lived, Hannibal Barca. If you're here for calm, boring history for sleep, you've come to the right place. Take a slow breath, get comfortable, and let's drift back to 218 BCE. The Second Punic War has just begun. Hannibal's army, tens of thousands of soldiers, cavalry, and even elephants, are attempting the impossible. They're crossing the Alps to invade Italy, guided by ambition, courage, and the kind of stubbornness that only desperation creates. The men are exhausted. Their supplies are dwindling. They're surrounded by cliffs, snow, and silence. There are no fires big enough to warm an army. No shelter from the wind that cuts through armour like knives. But still, they march, and when they stop, they have to sleep. If sleep can even exist in that kind of cold. So tonight, we'll follow them step by step. We'll see what they carried, what they wore, what they ate, and where they collapsed when their bodies refused to move another inch. We'll look at the way their tents failed, the way the elephants froze, and the strange, fragile ways they tried to hold on to life in a place that wanted them gone. This is not the Carthage of merchants and harbours. This is the Carthage of frostbite, smoke, and exhaustion. A story of men who closed their eyes on frozen ground and dreamed of heat they might never feel again. So, settle in, slow your breathing. The fire is fading, the wind is rising, and the Alps are waiting. You open your eyes to a world made entirely of white and grey, the kind of grey that doesn't belong to clouds or stone, but to exhaustion itself. The air burns as you breathe it in, freezing your throat before you can even exhale. You're not in your bed. You're not even in a house. You're in the Alps, somewhere between what used to be a mountain path and what now feels like the edge of existence. The snow has swallowed the trail, the sky, and your will to continue. Congratulations, you're officially part of Hannibal's army. The good news, you're still alive. The bad news, you're not sure you'll stay that way for long. Your blanket is a scrap of animal hide, stiff as a plank, brittle with ice. It's not soft, it's not warm, and it smells like every bad decision you've made since leaving Spain. Your bed is the ground, which isn't so much ground as a mix of rock, frozen mud, and the trampled remains of whatever passed for grass before winter murdered it. The cold has weight here. It presses down on you like another layer of armour, one you can't remove. You roll over trying to stretch the ache out of your legs and immediately regret it. Your joints crack like frozen wood. The noise echoes in the thin air. Somewhere nearby, a horse coughs, a soldier groans, and a few feet away, something that used to be a campfire gives up its last breath of smoke. You're wearing every piece of clothing you own which isn't saying much. A linen tunic that's long since lost its colour, a wool cloak stiff with frost, and whatever layers of animal skin you could scavenge. Your boots are cracked. The leather has frozen so many times it feels like walking with slabs of stone tied to your feet. You can't feel your toes, which might be a blessing, because if you could, you'd realise some of them aren't in great condition. Frostbite doesn't announce itself. It just quietly removes pieces of you one by one. You're starving. The last thing you ate was a handful of barley mash 2 nights ago, cooked over a fire so weak it couldn't melt snow, let alone cook food properly. Now you're left with a stomach that feels like it's trying to eat itself. You'd trade your sword for a crust of bread, but the last man who tried that ended up with neither sword nor bread. In Hannibal's army, hunger isn't a side effect. It's a constant companion. It gnaws at you during the day and lies beside you at night. You pull your cloak tighter and look around. The camp is a mess. More like a graveyard that forgot it's supposed to be quiet. Dozens of men huddle together for warmth, their faces hidden under layers of cloth, their bodies pressed so close they've stopped caring about personal space. A few don't move at all. You tell yourself they're asleep, but you know better. Sleep and death look alarmingly similar up here. You've learned not to check too closely. Somewhere in the distance, an elephant trumpets weakly. A sound so out of place it feels like a hallucination. The great beasts of Carthage, symbols of power and terror in warmer lands, are suffering worse than the men. Their thick hides offer no protection against mountain winds that slice through everything. You can hear them shifting, restless and pained, their handlers murmuring desperate words in Punic and Greek, trying to calm animals that have never known snow before this cursed journey. A few have already collapsed. The mountain doesn't care how mighty you are in Africa or Spain. Up here, everyone freezes the same. You sit up, your breath forming small clouds that immediately vanish. The horizon is pale, the sun hidden somewhere behind a curtain of ice and fog. Dawn isn't a sunrise here. It's just the darkness changing shades. Your comrades begin to stir. One man curses softly, another sneezes, and somewhere behind you, a voice mutters a prayer to whatever gods still have time to listen. The language doesn't matter. In this army, there are Carthaginians, Iberians, Numidians, Gauls, an entire patchwork of tongues united by misery. You rub your hands together, trying to bring life back into your fingers. They're cracked, raw, and swollen. The nails are blackened from cold and dirt. You can't remember the last time you felt warmth that wasn't from your own body heat, or someone else's, when you've been forced to huddle like frightened animals just to stay alive through the night. You used to be a soldier. Now you're a bundle of cloth and bone pretending to be one. Hannibal promised glory, riches, and the defeat of Rome. What he didn't mention was this: the endless march through a landscape that looks like the gods abandoned it halfway through creation. You think of home, the city of Carthage, with its sunlit harbours and smell of olive oil and sea salt, the noise of merchants calling across the market, the warmth of the sand under your feet. It feels like another lifetime, maybe another life entirely. Here your world is reduced to one thought at a time. Keep moving, keep breathing, stay alive. The morning routine doesn't exist anymore. There's no washing, no breakfast, no comfort. Just survival. You try to scrape the frost off your cloak. The fabric cracks. You shake your head and start packing what little you own. A dented helmet, a worn shield, and a small pouch of grain that's more ice than food. Around you the others do the same. No one talks much. Talking wastes breath, and breath is precious when the air itself feels like a weapon. You look at the man beside you. His face is covered in frost, his beard stiff with ice. His eyes are open, staring at nothing. You give him a gentle shake, hoping he'll blink, curse, anything. He doesn't. You sigh, pull the cloak over his face, and move on. There's no time for burial. The snow will take him soon enough. Someone starts the morning fire, or tries to. The wood they gathered last night is frozen solid, and the sparks die as soon as they appear. You crouch beside the small flame, cupping your hands around it like it's something sacred. It flickers weakly, throwing more smoke than heat. You'd kill for a proper fire, one that actually burns instead of coughing itself to death. The smoke crawls up your nose, mixing with the smell of wet leather, sweat, and rot. It's the smell of endurance, unpleasant, constant, and unmistakably human. You remember the first days of the march, back in the foothills. The air was still mild then, the paths clear, spirits high. Hannibal rode at the front, his soldiers cheering, confident that this mad plan would work. Now, no one cheers. You haven't seen Hannibal in days. He's somewhere ahead, probably as cold and hungry as the rest of you, though it's easier to imagine that he's fine. You need to. Every army needs the illusion that someone in charge knows what they're doing. You chew on a piece of dried meat you saved from 2 nights ago. It's hard as bone, flavourless, and barely chewable, but it gives your jaw something to do. You take a sip of melted snow from your water skin. It tastes like iron and smoke. The cold water burns your throat, and for a moment you regret drinking it, but first is worse. Around you the camp starts to move. Men rise, stamping their feet, trying to get blood flowing again. A few kick at their sleeping companions, checking who made it through the night. The living keep moving, the dead stay behind. You'd think that would make people sad, but after weeks of this, emotion freezes faster than flesh. Grief is a luxury, and luxuries don't survive in the Alps. A trumpet sounds somewhere ahead, muffled by the wind. The signal to prepare for another day's march. The sound is weak, barely reaching the edges of the camp, but it's enough. You pull yourself up, stretch your arms, and feel the familiar sting of sore muscles. Every movement hurts, but pain is proof you're still alive. You strap on your gear. The leather straps are stiff, the metal cold enough to burn skin. Your shield is cracked, your spear dull, but it doesn't matter. There won't be any fighting today. The enemy is the mountain itself. You tie your cloak tighter around your neck, take one last look at the dying fire, and start walking. The snow crunches underfoot, a sound that's become the rhythm of your life. Step, crunch, breathe. Step, crunch, breathe. You focus on the sound because thinking too much makes it worse. If you think about how far you still have to go, or how many of your friends you've already lost, the mountain wins. You glance to the side and see the elephants again, moving slowly, their trunks dragging along the ground. Their handlers prod them gently, whispering in soft voices. It's a strange sight, giant animals trudging through a landscape of ice and death. You can't help but feel sorry for them. They didn't choose this war. They didn't choose to climb a mountain where even men can barely survive. But they keep moving because that's all there is to do. Your breath comes out in ragged clouds. The air smells like nothing, just cold, endless cold. The wind howls through the passes, carrying with it the faint sound of someone calling for help. Or maybe just the wind mocking you. You pull your cloak tighter, bury your face in it, and keep walking. Hours pass. The sun rises higher, but it doesn't warm anything. The light just makes the snow brighter, almost blinding. You can't tell where the path ends and the cliff begins. One wrong step could send you tumbling into the void, but your legs move automatically now. They know the routine. Don't stop, don't fall, don't think. By midday your body feels hollow. You stop for a moment, leaning on your spear, watching your breath fade in the air. The silence up here is suffocating. Even the birds have given up on this place. Somewhere behind you, a man slips, curses, and then there's a sound like gravel shifting. You don't look back. You can't. The mountain doesn't give second chances. When the order to rest comes, you collapse where you stand. No one bothers setting up proper camp. There's no point. You drop your pack, sit on a rock, and close your eyes for a moment. Sleep isn't rest anymore, it's just temporary escape. You drift in and out, half dreaming, half freezing, the cold creeping deeper into your bones. When you wake again, the sky is already dimming. Another day gone, another night to survive. You rub your hands, your face, anything to feel something. The wind picks up again, howling like a living thing. You can taste snow in the air. Someone nearby mutters that another storm is coming. No one answers. What is there to say? You reach into your pouch, find a small piece of bread, and break it in half. You give part to the man beside you. He nods once, too tired to speak. You chew slowly, each bite a small victory. You don't talk about the cold anymore. You don't talk about home. You just exist. One frozen breath at a time. Night comes without warning. The temperature drops fast, and the world turns to ice again. You curl up in your cloak, press against the man next to you, and hope your combined body heat is enough. The stars are hidden behind clouds. The fire won't light. The snow starts to fall again, covering the dead, the living, and everything in between. You close your eyes, listening to the sound of the wind tearing through the mountains. It's not peace. It's not comfort. It's just a sound of endurance. You remind yourself that morning will come, even if it doesn't feel like it. And when it does, you'll rise again, still breathing, still walking, still freezing. Because in Hannibal's march, survival isn't about strength or courage. It's about stubbornness. And as you drift toward another restless half-sleep, surrounded by the sound of shivering men and dying fires, you realize that the cold isn't the worst part. The worst part is knowing that tomorrow will be exactly the same. You wake before the sun, because no one really sleeps up here anymore. You just lose consciousness for short intervals and hope you wake up again. The cold has found its way through every layer of fabric and flesh. It's inside your bones now. An uninvited guest that refuses to leave. The wind hasn't stopped all night. It just changed direction. The sound of it rattles through the pass, bending the thin trees that cling to the cliffs, like prisoners trying to escape their chains. Someone kicks your boot, not out of cruelty, but to make sure you're not frozen stiff. You grunt in response, a sound that proves you're still among the living. Around you, the camp is already in motion. Men groan as they pull themselves upright, coughing, rubbing life back into their limbs. A few don't move. The snow has already started to claim them, smoothing over their shapes, as if the mountain is politely cleaning up after your failures. No one counts the dead anymore. There's no time, and no one wants to know how many faces won't be there at the next stop. The order goes out to move. There's no trumpet this time, just Hannibal's voice carried faintly by the wind. You can't see him, but everyone recognizes that tone. Calm, deliberate, a man convincing thousands of dying soldiers that they're part of something glorious. You don't even need to understand the words. The sound itself is enough to make you stand, to adjust your pack, to start walking again, because if you stay still, the cold finishes what hunger started. The path ahead looks like it's been carved by some cruel god. The The snow is waist deep in places. The edges of the trail vanish into open space, and the rocks beneath are slick with ice. One misstep, one wrong shift of weight, and you'll fall. Some have already tested that theory. You've heard the sounds, the clatter of armour, the brief scream, then silence. The drop goes on forever. No one looks over the edge. No one recovers the bodies. You begin to climb. The incline is steep, the air so thin it feels like breathing through cloth. Each step takes effort. Your calves burn, your lungs sting, your heart hammers against your ribs. You move slowly, like an animal trapped in mud. Around you, the column snakes upward in silence. The only sounds are the crunch of snow, the snorts of exhausted horses, and the low, miserable groans of elephants forcing themselves up the path. The elephants move last, guided by handlers who look half dead themselves. You hear one of the beasts trumpet again, weakly, the sound bouncing off the cliffs. It's eerie, almost mournful. One of them slips, its massive foot breaking through the icy crust, and everyone around it shouts, scrambling to get out of the way. The animal steadies itself, barely, breathing clouds of steam into the air. You can see the ribs showing beneath its skin. Even its strength has limits. Someone ahead of you collapses. You don't know his name, only that he came from Iberia, one of the men Hannibal recruited when he crossed the Ebro. He was loud back then, full of stories, always laughing around the campfire. Now he just falls silently into the snow, face first. The man behind him steps around the body without a word. You do the same. There's no choice. If you stop to help, you might never start again. The mountain doesn't allow sentiment. You keep your eyes on the boots in front of you, focusing on the rhythm of their steps. 1, 2, 3. Don't think about how much farther there is to go. Don't look at the endless wall of rock rising above. Don't think about home. Just walk. Your breath fogs in front of you, turning to ice crystals that clink to your beard. The cold has a taste now, metallic, dry, and sharp. You swallow, and it feels like shards of glass sliding down your throat. Midway up the slope, the wind changes again. It comes roaring down the pass, carrying snow and dust with it. The air fills with a blinding white haze. You can't see the person ahead of you. You hunch low, shielding your face with your arm, but it doesn't help. The wind finds every gap in your clothing, slicing into your skin. You hear men shouting, but the sound is swallowed immediately. Somewhere ahead, a horse panics. The scream it makes doesn't sound like anything that belongs on Earth. A few seconds later there's a crash, then nothing. You stop moving. For a moment, you just stand there, the snow whipping against your face, trying to remember why you're here. Rome, that's why. You're here because a man with fire in his eyes said you'd bring Rome to its knees, that you'd march across the Alps and descend into Italy like a storm. It sounded noble once. Now it sounds like madness. You blink the ice from your eyelashes and start walking again. The man ahead of you has fallen to his knees, trying to dig his hands into the snow for balance. You grab his arm and pull. He stumbles to his feet, mutters something you don't catch and keeps moving. The two of you don't look at each other again. That's how it is now. Help if you can, but don't expect thanks. By midday, the storm begins to fade. The wind still bites, but the sky opens enough for a weak sunlight to spill across the peaks. It doesn't warm anything, but it reminds you that the world still exists beyond the snow. You pause to catch your breath and look around. The view would be beautiful if you weren't living inside it. Sharp ridges, endless white valleys, and distant peaks fading into mist. You almost forget that each one hides another dead comrade, another broken animal, another stretch of agony waiting for you. You pull a strip of cloth tighter around your face. Your lips are cracked and bleeding, the skin on your cheeks raw from frostbite. When you blink, the edges of your eyelids stick together. You don't bother trying to fix it, you just keep walking. The trail narrows again, forcing the column into a single line. On one side, the cliff rises straight up. On the other, it drops away into nothing. You hug the wall as you move, fingers brushing the cold rock for balance. Every few minutes, small chunks of snow slide off the ledges above, pattering down like soft warnings. You hear someone behind you whispering a prayer. Another man laughs, a dry, cracked laugh that sounds more like a cough. The guides, local tribesmen Hannibal hired to lead the army through these passes, shout warnings as they move ahead, testing the snow with long poles. They're wrapped in furs, their faces hidden. You don't trust them, none of you do. Word has spread that some of them led a supply column into an ambush 2 days ago. Whether it's true doesn't matter. Up here, fear travels faster than truth. At one point, you reach a section of the trail where an avalanche has buried part of the path. The snow is piled high, blocking the way forward. Hannibal himself appears then, mounted on one of the surviving horses. His face is gaunt, his eyes hollow, but his presence is enough to pull the men together. He shouts orders, points to the ridge above, and within moments, soldiers are hacking at the snow with their shields and spears, clearing a narrow path. You join them, your hands burning with cold. The snow is heavy, packed solid as stone. Each handful feels like lifting lead. When the way finally opens, the army moves again, slower than before. The sun dips low, throwing long shadows across the mountains. You can feel the temperature dropping, and you know what that means. Another night. Another battle against the cold. You can already feel the fatigue building, that deep ache that starts in the bones and spreads until it becomes the only thing you know. Someone slips ahead of you, sliding down onto the ice. You reach out instinctively, grabbing his arm before he goes over the edge. His shield clatters away into the abyss. You pull him back up, both of you gasping. He nods once, eyes wide, and mutters a hoarse thank you before stumbling forward again. You stare after him for a moment, then follow. It's strange how quickly death becomes routine. By the time the sun disappears completely, you're still not at the next camp. The light fades into blue shadow, and the path vanishes under your feet. The order goes out to stop where you are. There's no flat ground here, no shelter, just a narrow ledge barely wide enough for 2 men to sit side by side. You drop your pack, sink to the ground, and pull your cloak tight. The rock is so cold it burns through the fabric. A few men try to light fires again, but there's no fuel. The snow here is too deep, the wood too scarce. The best you can do is huddle together, sharing whatever warmth your bodies still have. You can hear quiet voices in the dark, men muttering prayers, cursing the gods, whispering to the ghosts of home. Someone starts humming a tune, something soft and foreign, a song from a place where the air doesn't hurt to breathe. It fades quickly. No one has the strength to sing anymore. You stare out into the night. The stars are sharp and cold, scattered across the sky like frost on glass. The moonlight reflects off the snow, turning everything into a pale blur. You can see the outlines of the mountains stretching into the distance. Somewhere out there lies Italy, the promised land of warmth, food, and battle. It feels impossibly far away. You close your eyes for a moment, not to sleep, but to forget. The cold presses against your eyelids. Your mind drifts back to Carthage again. The warmth of the sun, the sound of waves against the harbour walls, the laughter of markets. You'd give anything to hear that again, to smell olive oil and dust instead of rotten snow. But then you open your eyes, and all of that vanishes. You're back on the mountainside, surrounded by silence, your breath misting in the dark. Someone beside you starts coughing, deep and wet. You can hear the rattle in his chest. He won't last long. None of you will if this goes on much longer. You glance toward where you think Hannibal is camped. Somewhere up there, he's probably awake too, staring at the same moon, wondering how many of his men will still be alive by morning. You shift your position, trying to get comfortable, but the ground doesn't allow it. Your body has stopped shivering. That's not a good sign. You know enough now to recognize the danger in stillness. You force yourself to move, to rub your arms, to stamp your feet. The others do the same, each man fighting sleep like it's the enemy. Because it is. Up here, sleep is just another word for freezing to death quietly. Hours pass, the night stretches on, endless and silent. The only movement is the slow drift of snowflakes falling from the cliffs above. Each one lands softly, like the mountain whispering a lullaby that kills. When dawn finally comes, it doesn't feel like victory. The light reveals what you already knew. Some didn't make it through the night. Their bodies sit frozen in place, eyes open, as if still keeping watch. You look at them briefly, then turn away. You've learned not to linger. The order comes to move again. You stand, your legs trembling, your body stiff as wood. The path ahead is worse than before. Narrower, steeper, crueler. You take a deep breath, adjust your cloak, and start walking. The air stings your lungs, the snow crunches beneath your feet, and your mind empties itself of everything except one thought. Just don't fall. And with that, you follow the others into the pale light, leaving behind the frozen dead, the broken trail, and another night that almost won. You wake to a crunching sound beside your ear. It takes a moment to realise it's your own teeth chattering. The cold has climbed inside your mouth during the night, and your jaw moves on its own, as if trying to chew through the air just to make heat. Your body aches in places you didn't know existed. The world is pale again, silent except for the wind that never really stopped. Your first thought is not about food, or home, or even survival. It's about how much it hurts just to move. You try anyway. The moment you shift, something beneath you cracks. The thin crust of ice that formed overnight splits open, revealing the layer of half-frozen mud underneath. That's your bed. A patch of dirt you softened yesterday by stamping on it with your boots. A thin sheet of snow that melted from your body heat. And a piece of animal hide that froze to the ground some time before midnight. You have to peel it loose, carefully so it doesn't tear. When it finally comes free, it brings a layer of dirt and frost with it, sticking to your hands like wet clay. You sit up slowly, every muscle stiff and protesting. There's no real comfort in movement, just a different kind of pain. Your breath clouds in front of you and disappears instantly. The wind whistles through the rocks, cutting at your face until it feels like the skin will split. You rub your arms, try to bring the blood back, but your fingers barely respond. They've gone a dull, waxy colour you try not to look at. All around you, the camp is waking. Men rise from shapes that look more like lumps of snow than human beings. A few shake the frost off their cloaks. Others don't bother. One man is trying to start a fire using twigs that look more like icicles. The smoke rises for a moment, then dies when the wind takes it. You can smell burnt leather. Someone tried to burn part of his own sandal for warmth. It didn't work, but the smell lingers, sharp and sour in the air. This is bedding, Hannibal style. A patch of ground so hard it bruises your ribs. A frozen cloak that crackles when you move. And a single thought to keep you alive. Don't stop breathing. There are no tents anymore. The few that survived the earlier storms were abandoned to lighten the loads. Now everyone sleeps under whatever they can find. Saddles, cloaks, empty sacks. The officers fare no better. Even Hannibal himself is said to lie wrapped in furs near the supply wagons. A general buried under snow like any other man. You reach for your boots, still half laced from last night, and discover they're frozen solid. You try to pull one on and nearly tear the skin off your heel. The leather feels like iron, the straps unyielding. Eventually, you just jam your foot inside and hope the movement will thaw them out before the march begins. It's like walking with slabs of stone attached to your feet. But at least you can stand. You take stock of what's left, of what's... Your blanket, if it deserves the name, is stiff, edged with frost so thick it sparkles in the weak light. You beat it against the ground to break the ice, then drape it around your shoulders. It doesn't help much. Cold air seeps in through every gap. You can feel it sneaking down your neck, creeping along your back, settling in your spine like a parasite. You notice the man beside you hasn't moved. His body is curled tightly, hands clasped near his chest, eyes half open. You don't need to check. The colour tells you everything. The snow has already started covering his legs. You reach over and close his eyelids. The gesture feels mechanical. Something you've done too many times. You don't even know his name. He was from Numidia, maybe. Or Gaul. The accents blur together now. All that matters is that he's gone, and the rest of you aren't yet. Someone calls out that it's time to move. You groan, push yourself up, and start gathering your things. There isn't much left to gather. A shield, cracked and rimmed with ice. A small leather pouch with the last of your grain rations. A wooden bowl you've been using as both plate and cup. The rest you leave. Anything not essential is a burden. And up here, even breathing feels like carrying a burden. As you stand, your knees tremble. The cold has made your joints sluggish, the muscles stiff. You stamp your feet, trying to get blood moving again. The noise startles a nearby horse, its eyes rolling white with fear. You whisper softly, a useless attempt to calm it. The animal's breath steams in the air, thick and heavy. It looks as miserable as you feel. The ground beneath the camp is a patchwork of ice and mud. When you move, your boots sink slightly, the cold water seeping through the seams. It's impossible to stay dry. The mixture of melted snow and dirt clings to everything. Armour, blankets, skin. Some men gave up trying days ago, accepting that the mountain would mark them with its filth. You can smell it now. Wet wool, smoke, sweat, and decay. It's the smell of too many bodies packed too closely, living and dying side by side. Someone is boiling snow in a bronze pot nearby. You walk over, holding your hands out over the faint flame. The fire hisses and spits, barely alive. The water in the pot trembles as it starts to melt. When it's finally drinkable, you take a small sip. It tastes like smoke and metal, but it's liquid, And that's enough. Your lips sting as you swallow. The inside of your mouth feels like sandpaper. A group of men to your left are dragging something heavy out from beneath a collapsed bit of snow. It takes you a moment to realise it's a body, frozen stiff, armour fused to the skin. They grunt as they lift it onto a flat piece of wood. The man in charge mutters that they will slide him down the slope later when the path opens up. There's no burial, no ceremony. The mountain gets its share every day, and there's no room to argue. When the order to move comes again, you groan inwardly. You only just manage to stand without shaking. But you know what happens to those who linger. The slower you are, the colder you get. And once you're too cold to move, the mountain finishes the job. So you shoulder your pack, tighten the cloak around you, and start following the others up the narrow path. The march feels endless. The snow reflects the light so harshly it burns your eyes. You squint until tears freeze at the corners. Each step forward feels like walking through thick sand, except every grain of it wants you dead. The wind gusts hard enough to shove you sideways. You lean into it, half crawling, half walking, your breath shallow and ragged. By midday, you stumble onto a small plateau where the army has stopped to rest. The ground here is uneven, rocks jutting out through the snow like bones. Men drop where they stand, too tired to care. You join them, sinking to your knees. The snow soaks through your clothes, but at least it's not moving. You take a handful and press it to your lips, letting it melt slowly. It's the only way to drink without using the last of your fuel. You look around. The landscape is the same in every direction. Grey peaks, white slopes, and the faint outline of men and animals moving like ghosts through the haze. Somewhere in that blur, Hannibal himself is directing the column, his cloak whipping in the wind. You can't imagine what drives him to keep going. Maybe he knows something you don't, or maybe he's just as trapped as the rest of you, too deep in this nightmare to turn back. The afternoon passes in silence. There's no talking anymore. The cold has stolen words as efficiently as it steals lives. When the sun begins to set, the order goes out to make camp again. You sigh, too tired even to curse. You find a flat patch of ground, clear away the loose snow with your hands, and begin preparing your bed. The process has become a ritual, one that feels absurd in its repetition. First, you spread your cloak, trying to smooth the wrinkles so it won't freeze into odd shapes overnight. Then you gather whatever brush or straw you can find, which is almost nothing at this altitude. The few dry twigs you collect, you place under your back to create a thin barrier between you and the earth. It won't make much difference, but habit keeps you doing it anyway. Next, you lie down, pressing your body into the snow to make a shallow impression. It's the only way to avoid sliding down the slope. In your sleep, the cold creeps in instantly. It doesn't wait. You can feel it seeping through the thin layer beneath you, moving up your legs, curling around your ribs. You pull your cloak tighter, tucking it beneath your chin. The fur collar is damp from your breath, but it's the closest thing you have to warmth. You curl up on your side, knees drawn to your chest, trying to conserve heat. Your body shakes uncontrollably. You press your arms against your chest, your hands wedged under your armpits, and will yourself not to stop moving. All around you, the army settles in. The noise is minimal, just the rustle of cloth, the creak of armour, the low murmur of men trying to convince themselves they're not freezing. Fires flicker weakly here and there, tiny orange dots swallowed by the vast darkness. The smell of smoke hangs heavy. It mixes with something else. The faint, sickly sweet odour of decay from the animals that didn't make it this far. You close your eyes, hoping for sleep, but it doesn't come. Instead, you drift in that strange space between waking and dreaming where time loses its meaning. You think of home again, of warmth, food, laughter, and the sound of waves. You think of family, of promises made long before you marched into this frozen wasteland. You picture Carthage's walls, bright and sun-baked, so far from the dead colour of snow. A sudden noise snaps you back, a rumble deep and distant. At first you think it's thunder, but then the ground shivers. Someone shouts. You sit up just in time to see a sheet of snow break free from a nearby ridge and cascade downward. An avalanche. It's not close enough to reach you, but the sound fills the valley like a roar from the gods. The men around you freeze, listening. The noise fades, leaving behind an awful silence. You exhale slowly. You don't talk about it. Everyone just lies back down, pretending it didn't happen, pretending they're not sleeping inches from the same fate. As night deepens, the stars appear, cold, sharp, indifferent. You can see your breath rising to meet them. The temperature drops again, and the air feels heavy, dense with ice. Your eyelids grow heavy. You fight to stay awake, not because you want to, but because you're afraid of what sleep might mean. You've seen too many men drift off and never wake again. Eventually, exhaustion wins. Your mind dulls, your heartbeat slows, and your thoughts blur into fragments. You dream of warmth that doesn't exist, of soft beds that never were, of mornings that don't begin with frost and fear. The wind howls, snow drifts across your body, and the world becomes white once more. When you stir again, it's not because of comfort, it's because your body has decided it can't lie still anymore. You roll over, your muscles screaming, and force your eyes open. The dawn is grey, colourless, and cruel. Your bedding is frozen solid again. You peel yourself free from it, leaving an imprint in the ice. You stand, dizzy, aching, alive. Barely. The mountain has taken another share of the army. You can see it in the missing faces, the empty spots where men once slept. No one says a word. There's nothing left to say. You tighten your cloak, stamp your feet, and wait for the order to move. The march continues, as it always does, and as you glance back at the patch of frozen mud where you slept, you realise something simple and terrible. This mountain has no mercy, and your body has no choice. It will keep lying down in the snow every night until one day it doesn't get back up. You wake to darkness again. Not night. Just the kind of morning that looks exactly like the night before, because the sky hasn't decided on a colour yet. The world outside your cloak is silent, except for the faint hiss of snow sliding down the rocks. You try to take a deep breath, but the air is so sharp it feels like swallowing knives. You cough once, a dry sound that echoes off the cliffs. It's another day in Hannibal's crossing, and the mountain is still winning. You reach for the fire you built last night. At least you think you built one. You remember sparks, the smell of smoke, a flicker of orange that promised warmth. Now there's only a small crater in the snow, filled with black ash and disappointment. You dig through it with your fingers, hoping for a live ember. There isn't one. The wood froze again before it ever had a chance to burn properly. You sigh and sit back. The cold air stings your face. Your lips are cracked and bleeding. The inside of your nose burns every time you breathe. Your hands look pale and waxy, like they belong to a corpse. You rub them together anyway, trying to convince them to remember what heat used to feel like. Someone nearby curses loudly in Punic. You glance over to see another soldier crouched over his own dead fire, blowing into it desperately. His breath fogs into the air and vanishes, the flames refusing to respond. He stares at the pile of frozen sticks for a moment, then kicks it over in frustration. The effort makes him cough until he can't breathe. He spits blood into the snow, wipes his mouth, and starts gathering more wood that isn't really wood anymore. Just frozen sponges pretending to be logs. Fire has become a luxury. You never thought you'd miss the sound of crackling wood so much. It used to mean safety, life, food. Now it's a memory. Even when you do manage to get a flame started, it dies within minutes. The air is too thin, the wood too wet, the cold too aggressive. It's like the mountain doesn't just hate you, it hates fire itself. You look around. Dozens of tiny smoke trails mark the spots where men are trying and failing to coax warmth into existence. Some blow gently into the embers. Others hover over them like priests at a ritual. You hear flint striking again and again, a rhythm of frustration. Each spark flares bright for half a heartbeat before the wind steals it away. You join them, because what else can you do? You crouch low, shielding the pit with your body, and strike your flint against a dull blade. A tiny spark leaps into the frozen air and dies instantly. You try again and again. The sound fills your ears, metallic and pointless. Finally, one lands on a piece of cloth you tore from your sleeve and blackened with soot last night, and the edge glows faintly. You lean close and blow gently. The ember flickers to life, then vanishes with a hiss. You close your eyes for a moment. You're not angry anymore. You're too tired to be angry. You just stare at the cold ground and laugh quietly, a dry sound that feels more like a cough. The man beside you glances over, shakes his head, and goes back to his own doomed fire. Someone down the slope manages to get a flame going. For a moment, it feels like victory. A few men gather around it, holding their hands over the weak glow, feeding it twigs, shreds of cloth, anything that burns. You watch the smoke curl upward in a thin line, before disappearing into the wind. The warmth barely reaches them, but they stand close anyway, their faces bathed in orange light. Then the wind shifts. A sudden gust roars through the camp, scattering snow and smoke in every direction. The flame dies instantly, leaving behind a hiss and a smell of burnt wool. No one says anything. The men just stare at the empty pit for a few seconds before walking away. You know the routine now. You scrape a patch of snow clear, pile up whatever dry material you can find. If you're lucky, a few pieces of bark or straw from an animal pack. And try again. You blow until your lungs ache. You strike the flint until your fingers bleed. If you manage even a flicker of orange, you feel something close to joy. But most mornings end the same way, with smoke in your eyes and no fire to show for it. The officers claim there's still fuel left somewhere in the supply wagons. You know better. The wood is frozen through, split and cracked from the cold. The oil jars have thickened to sludge. The small sacks of charcoal are buried under snow or lost down the cliffs. What little remains burns too fast to matter. You've seen men toss entire shields into the flames just to boil a single pot of snow water. It's not desperation anymore. It's survival math. You take your knife and scrape frost off the blade. It's dull from use, the edge nicked and blackened. You use it to cut a strip of hide from your bedroll, one you don't need because it's already too stiff to lie on. You toss it into the pit and light it with a flint, The smoke rises thick and foul. It smells like burnt flesh and desperation, but it's something. You hold your hands over it, feel the faintest hint of warmth, and nearly cry. Around you, men are doing the same. The camp smells like burning leather, hair, and old oil. The wind carries the scent up the slopes, mixing it with the stench of animals that didn't survive the night. It's an awful smell, but at least it means the living are still trying. You glance towards the elephants. The beasts are huddled together near a rock wall, their trunks tucked close to their bodies. Their handlers are wrapped in furs, throwing handfuls of snow onto the animals' backs to keep their skin from cracking in the cold. One of the elephants lets out a low groan that sounds eerily human. The sound echoes through the pass like a ghost. You remember how powerful they looked at the start of the campaign. Towering creatures draped in bronze and cloth. Symbols of Carthaginian pride. Now they look like monuments to exhaustion. The air grows thinner as the day brightens. The light here doesn't feel like sunlight. It's too pale, too cold. It doesn't warm the skin. It just illuminates the misery. Yet the snow glitters cruelly underfoot, blinding you when you try to look up. You squint until your eyes water. The tears freeze before they can fall. By midday, the fires have all died again. The men move slowly through the camp, checking on the wounded, counting supplies, chewing what little food remains. You tear a strip of dried meat and hold it in your mouth until it softens enough to chew. It tastes of salt and smoke. You swallow quickly before the cold steals the warmth from your throat. Then you notice the smoke rising from one of the officers' camps. Real smoke, not just steam. Somehow they've managed to light a proper fire. You wander closer, drawn by instinct more than curiosity. A small circle of men stands around a pit dug deep into the snow. At its centre, a bundle of oiled cloth burned steadily, feeding on a few logs they must have kept hidden for weeks. The fire crackles softly, the first real sound of life you've heard all day. You stop a few paces away. The warmth barely reaches you, but your body leans toward it anyway. One of the officers notices, waves you back. "For boiling rations," he says in a rough accent. You nod and step away. You don't argue. There's no point. The fire belongs to the army, not to you. As the day drags on, the wind picks up again. It whistles through the gaps in the rocks, carrying tiny shards of ice that sting your skin. You pull your cloak tighter, hunch low, and keep moving. Your breath comes out in thick bursts that immediately freeze in your beard. The air feels thinner with each hour. Breathing is no longer automatic. You have to think about it, focus on every inhale. It feels like the mountain is pressing down on your chest. By evening, you've had enough. You stop walking, drop to your knees, and start building another fire. You don't care that it probably won't work. The act itself is what keeps you sane. You scrape a small pit in the snow, gather twigs, and strike your flint again. The first few sparks vanish. The next catches. You blow gently. The ember glows red, faint but real. You feed it a scrap of cloth, then a sliver of wood. The flame flickers upward, fragile as breath. You hold your hands close. The heat is weak but glorious. You feel it seep into your palms, up your wrists. It's the first real comfort you've had in days. You stare at the flame until your eyes blur. You want to remember this, what warmth looks like, what it sounds like, what it means. You think of home again. You picture the hearths of Carthage, the orange glow against stone walls, the laughter of families gathered around it. You can almost smell the smoke, rich and comforting, not like this bitter, thin air. But the memory fades as quickly as the fire. A gust of wind rushes down from the cliffs and snuffs it out in an instant. You sit there for a long time, staring at the wisp of smoke that lingers, twisting upward before disappearing into the darkness. Night comes early again. You can feel it settling around you like another layer of ice. The fires are gone. The light has vanished. The camp is silent except for the sound of breathing and the occasional crack of shifting snow. You lie back on your cloak, stare up at the sky. The stars are too bright, almost cruel in their clarity. You can see your breath rising to meet them. Each exhale feels like giving something away you can't afford to lose. The air has changed. It's colder, yes, but there's something else, something heavy. Every breath feels thinner, like the mountain has decided you've had enough oxygen for one lifetime. You take slow, shallow breaths, trying to keep the air in your lungs from freezing on the way down. It doesn't work. You can feel the burn inside your chest, deep and steady. You roll onto your side, facing the slope. The snow glows faintly in the moonlight, an endless sheet of white that never seems to end. Somewhere below, the fires of the lower camps flicker weakly, tiny dots of orange that look impossibly far away. You wonder if any of them are still burning, or if the wind has already claimed them too. Sleep comes in waves like drowning slowly. You drift in and out, never fully gone, never fully awake. Each time you open your eyes, the sky looks the same. Each time you close them, you hear the whisper of the wind, the soft hiss of snow settling on your cloak. You dream of fire that burns clean and steady, of warmth that doesn't vanish, of air that doesn't cut. When morning comes, the camp looks the same as it always does. White, silent, half dead. You sit up, shake the snow off your body, and check your pit. The ashes are cold again. You brush your fingers through them, hoping for a spark, but there's nothing left. You stand, stretch your aching limbs, and glance at the others. No one speaks. No one needs to. You all know the rule now. Fires don't last in the Alps. Nothing does. You gather your things, tighten your cloak, and start walking again, leaving behind another patch of dead ash. The mountain doesn't care. It's patient. It knows it will outlast you. You wake to a sound that doesn't belong in this frozen place. It's low, heavy, and carries through the thin air like thunder wrapped in pain. For a moment, you think you're dreaming. Then you hear it again, a deep groan that seems to vibrate through the ground. You lift your head and squint through the fog. The shapes moving in the grey distance aren't men. They're bigger, slower, and far more tragic. The elephants are still alive, at least some of them. You sit up, pulling your cloak tighter around your shoulders. The cold hasn't gone anywhere. It never does. It's inside your clothes, your lungs, your bones. Your body protests every movement, but curiosity wins. You rise to your feet and start toward the sound, boots crunching on snow that refuses to compact. Each step is slow, deliberate. The air smells worse today, like smoke, dung, and something that used to be alive. The fog begins to thin as the light grows. You see them clearly now. The elephants, the pride of Hannibal's army, those mighty beasts dragged from the heat of Africa into the cruelty of the Alps. Once they were symbols of power, unstoppable and awe-inspiring. Now they look like relics of another world. Their skin, cracked and ashy, hangs loose over ribs that push out like stone beneath leather. Their eyes are dull, their movements slow. Each exhale pours out clouds of white steam, as if their souls are trying to escape through their trunks. Their handlers move among them like ghosts. Wrapped in furs and rags, they whisper softly in Punic and Greek, words of comfort that sound useless against the mountain's indifference. You can hear the strain in their voices, the mix of love and futility that comes from watching something too strong to die and too weak to live. They brush snow off the animals' backs with frozen hands, feed them what's left of the hay that hasn't turned to ice, and rub their legs to keep the blood moving. It's a ritual now, not a rescue. You stand there, staring. The smell hits you next. A thick, sour stench of sweat, rot, and decay. It clings to everything, mixing with the cold in a way that makes it impossible to ignore. You breathe through your mouth, but it doesn't help. The odour of death has a way of getting into you, as if the air itself is turning against you. You notice one elephant lying on its side, trunk twitching weakly. Its handler kneels beside it, murmuring something too quiet to hear. The animal's eyes are open, glazed over but still moving slightly. You can see the ribs shift with each shallow breath. It tries to lift its head, fails, and lets out a sound that freezes the camp in silence. It's long and low, almost human, the kind of noise that makes your stomach twist. The handler strokes its face, tears freezing on his cheeks. When the sound fades, the man stands and looks at the others. No one speaks. They all know what comes next. Two soldiers approach, carrying axes. They move slowly, reluctantly. There's no ceremony, no words, just necessity. The first blow lands behind the animal's head, dull and final. The second finishes it. The sound is awful, but you don't look away. You can't. The elephant's body goes still, the steam from its breath fading into the air. The handler steps back, staring at the creature as though part of himself just disappeared. The soldiers move on. There's no time for grief here. The meat will feed the living, the hide will become warmth, and the bones will be left to the snow. You turn away, sick to your stomach, but unable to judge them. You understand. The army has to survive, and the mountain doesn't negotiate. You walk a little farther and stop beside another elephant, one that's still standing. Its trunk hangs low, swaying gently. Its ears flick now and then, shaking off snowflakes. You reach out and touch its leg. The skin is rough, like cold stone. The animal shifts slightly, acknowledging you with a tired rumble that feels like it's coming from deep underground. You whisper something, not words, just sound, and step back. The creature blinks slowly, as if deciding whether to keep existing. You remember stories from home, tales of Carthaginian elephants trampling through enemy lines, unstoppable forces of war. Back then, they said Rome trembled at the sound of their steps. Standing here now, you can't imagine anything trembling except the men trying to keep them alive. These beasts aren't monsters or weapons anymore. They're prisoners, same as you. The only difference is that you can complain, and they can't. The handlers start cutting up the dead elephant. The sound of knives against hide echoes through the pass. The smell grows worse, metallic, greasy, thick enough to taste. You turn your face away and try to focus on the snow instead. It's better to look at the endless white than at what survival looks like up close. A gust of wind tears through the camp, carrying with it a mix of smoke and decay. You can hear men coughing, gagging, cursing. The smell clings to your cloak, your hair, your skin. You'll never get it out. You wonder if this is what the Romans will smell when you finally reach Italy. The scent of an army that's half dead already. Hannibal passes by, riding one of the few surviving horses. His face is pale and drawn, his beard rimed with frost. He glances at the carcass as he goes, his expression unreadable. For a moment, you think you see something in his eyes. Not sorrow exactly, but the quiet fury of a man watching his plan bleed out before it's begun. He says nothing, just keeps riding. The soldiers part to let him pass, eyes down. No one wants to meet the gaze of a general who's losing an army, one heartbeat at a time. The rest of the day is a blur of movement and stench. The army pushes forward again, dragging what's left of the supplies, leaving behind the bodies, human and animal alike. The path winds along the edge of a cliff, the wind howling like it's laughing at you. You can see bones sticking out of the snow in places. From earlier maybe, or from something the mountain decided to uncover. You try not to look too long. Your feet ache, your hands are numb. You can feel the hunger deep in your gut now. Not sharp anymore, just a dull, constant emptiness. You pass one of the supply wagons, its wheels half buried in ice. Inside, you see hides stacked neatly beside barrels of salted meat. The sight makes you sick. You know where that meat came from. You know what you'll be chewing tonight. By evening, the army halts again. The wind dies for once, leaving an eerie stillness behind. Fires are lit, small and weak, but enough to mark the camps. You sit near one, wrapping your arms around your knees, staring into the flame. The smell of cooked meat drifts through the air. Strong, heavy, unmistakable. Someone hands you a wooden bowl. You take it without looking. Inside is a stew, so thick you can barely tell what's in it. You eat anyway. The taste is bitter, oily and strangely sweet. You try not to think about it. Around you, men eat in silence. No one jokes, no one talks. The crackle of the fires and the chewing are the only sounds. Somewhere in the darkness, an elephant trumpets weakly. The noise cuts through the silence like a memory refusing to die. You look up, half expecting to see the great beasts marching again, proud and unstoppable. Instead, you see shapes moving slowly through the mist. Grey shadows wrapped in white. You can't tell which ones are men and which are elephants. In the cold, everyone moves the same way. Heavy, tired, and lost, the night deepens, the fires shrink. You lie down on the frozen ground again, wrapping your cloak tightly around you. The smell still hangs in the air, thick and nauseating. It's in your hair, your mouth, your clothes. You close your eyes, trying to imagine anything else. The sea breeze of Carthage, the scent of olive oil and salt, the sound of waves breaking against the docks. But your mind won't stay there. It keeps dragging you back to the mountains, to the sound of axes, to the low moan of dying elephants. You roll onto your side and look toward the horizon. The sky glows faintly, reflecting the fires scattered across the camp. It's strange, almost beautiful. For a moment, it feels like you're standing beneath 1,000 stars instead of smoke and snow. You think about how far you've come, how far there still is to go, and how many of you will never see what's on the other side. You drift in and out of sleep. In your dreams, the elephants walk through the snow, but they're not dying anymore. Their steps are steady, their eyes bright. You can feel the ground shake beneath you. You follow them, their shapes huge against the mountains, leading you somewhere warm. But when you wake, there's only the wind and the smell of misery clinging to the air. You sit up again, exhausted, and stare at the fire. It's barely alive, a small red glow fighting against the dark. You hold your hands close, even though the heat doesn't reach you. It's the gesture that matters now. The fire, the elephants, the men, all of you are trying to survive something that doesn't want to be survived. The wind picks up again, and the smoke curls upward, taking the last of the warmth with it. You pull your cloak tighter, close your eyes, and whisper to yourself that tomorrow might be different. But you don't believe it. Not really. Because tomorrow, the elephants will groan again, the handlers will cry again, and the mountain will watch in silence, patient and unmoved, as Carthage's army keeps marching into the cold. You wake to a smell that shouldn't exist this high in the mountains. Smoke and fat. It's faint, thin, almost imaginary, but real enough to make your stomach tighten. Hunger has been gnawing at you for days, but this is different. This is the kind of hunger that feels personal, the kind that comes from watching your own body eat itself. You sit up slowly, every joint creaking like old wood, and rub the ice from your beard. It cracks and falls away in small white flakes. The fire near you has gone out again, leaving only a patch of blackened snow. But somewhere nearby, someone is cooking something, and the smell makes your brain forget how to think about anything else. You pull yourself upright and start walking toward the scent, your boots crunching on the crusted snow. The air burns your throat when you breathe, and your breath fogs so thick it feels like smoke coming from your lungs. The world around you is grey. Sky, snow, rock, all the same colour, all blending together. You could walk off a cliff and not realise it until it's too late. You follow the smell through the haze until you find a small group of soldiers crouched around a fire. The flames are weak, their colour dim and tired, but they exist, which already makes them rare. A bronze pot sits over the embers, steam curling from it like a promise. You can't tell what's inside, and you're not sure you want to. One of the men stirs it slowly with the handle of a broken spear. The sound it makes, the scrape of metal against metal, is the most hopeful noise you've heard in days. They glance up as you approach. No one says anything. There's no such thing as invitational politeness out here. If you're standing close enough to the heat, you belong. You sink down beside them, hands extended toward the fire. The warmth feels unreal, like a memory from another life. The man with the spear lifts the pot slightly and peers inside. You see chunks of something floating in dark water. Meat, maybe, or something pretending to be. He grunts, ladles out a small portion into a wooden bowl, and hands it to the man next to him. The bowl makes its way around the circle, each person taking a few mouthfuls before passing it on. When it reaches you, you hesitate for a moment, then take a sip. The taste is indescribable. Grease, smoke, salt, and something bitter that reminds you of iron. It's hot enough to burn your tongue, but you don't care. You take another sip, then another. The liquid coats your throat, thick and oily. You tell yourself it's meat, horse, maybe, or mule. Something that used to carry you but doesn't anymore. You don't ask. You've learned not to ask. When the bowl is empty, you hand it back. The man who stirred the pot adds more snow to the mix, stretching the broth thinner. He mutters that there's no more salt. There hasn't been for days. The only reason the stew tastes of anything at all is because the pot hasn't been cleaned since Spain. Layers of old meals cling to the metal, seasoning each new batch with the ghost of the past. You look around at the others. They eat mechanically, eyes half closed, faces blank. No one speaks. Eating has stopped being an act of pleasure. It's maintenance. You're just keeping the body from giving up completely. A man coughs violently beside you, spits into the snow, and goes back to chewing. Another stares into the fire, bowl in hand, moving food from mouth to mouth like someone half asleep. You remember when dinner used to mean something, back in warmer lands, when you still had proper rations. Bread, olives, beans, maybe even wine if you were lucky. You remember sitting around fires that burned bright, laughing, talking about home, about Rome, about the glory to come. Now there's no laughter, just chewing and breathing, and the faint sound of wind scraping across stone. A shout comes from farther down the slope. You glance up and see a few men dragging something heavy between them. It takes a moment to recognise it as another carcass. One of the pack animals that slipped on the ice the night before. Its neck is broken, legs twisted, eyes already glazed. The men drop it near the camp and stand over it, panting. One of them pulls out a knife. The others look away, but not far. You can feel the tension in the air. That quiet, hungry kind of attention that no one admits to. The first cut is quick. The steam that rises from the wound smells like blood and wet leather. You swallow hard, your stomach twisting, but the hunger doesn't care about dignity anymore. Within minutes, strips of meat are being cut and handed out. Some go straight onto fires, sizzling and curling in the heat. Others disappear into pockets and pouches for later. The smell fills the air. Thick, greasy, unmistakable. You know it's wrong, but you also know it's survival. You get a small piece, barely the size of your palm. You hold it over the flame on the tip of your knife, watching it darken, shrink, drip fat into the snow. When it starts to smoke, you pull it back and take a bite. The outside is charred, the inside still raw. It tastes like smoke, salt, and guilt. You chew slowly, swallow, and feel the warmth spread down your throat like fire. For a brief moment, you almost feel human again. Around you, others do the same. No one speaks. The only sounds are the hiss of fat hitting flame and the low murmur of wind. It feels like eating in a graveyard. Quiet, reverent, inevitable. Someone mutters a prayer, half under their breath, a mixture of thanks and apology. You look at him, then at the rest, and realise no one's mocking him for it. Not tonight. The mountain has stripped away pride along with everything else. After the meal, what's left of the carcass is hacked apart and distributed. Bones are cracked open for marrow, hides cut for cloaks, tendons pulled for rope. Nothing is wasted. Even the blood is collected in bowls, mixed with snow, and boiled into a thin soup that tastes like metal and smoke. You drink it anyway. It's warm, and that's all that matters. The handlers tend to the remaining animals. The few horses, mules, and elephants that can still move. They feed them handfuls of frozen straw, bits of bark, anything vaguely edible. You can see the desperation in their faces. The animals chew slowly, eyes dull, ribs showing through their skin. You turn away. You know what happens when the food runs out again. As night falls, the temperature drops fast, the fires dim, and the smell of cooked meat fades into the scent of smoke and wet wool. You sit with your back against a rock, staring into the dying embers. The hunger is quieter now, but it hasn't gone away. It just waits, patient and cruel. You think of the markets of Carthage, the piles of figs and dates, the smell of roasted fish and bread. You think of the noise, the colour, the life. It feels like remembering someone else's story. The man beside you offers a piece of something wrapped in cloth. You take it without asking. It's cold, tough, chewy. You bite down and taste salt and smoke again. He says it's elephant meat from the one that died 2 days ago. You nod and take another bite. The thought makes your stomach twist, but you keep chewing. It's food, and food is the only reason you're still breathing. You look up at the sky. The stars are hidden behind clouds again. The wind has died, but the air is heavy, waiting. You know tomorrow will be worse. There's less wood, less meat, less of everything. You wonder how long the army can keep moving like this. Half alive, half starved, following a man who seems untouched by the same hunger. Yeah, you don't blame Hannibal. You still believe in him, or at least you want to. But belief doesn't fill your stomach. You lie down, pulling your cloak tight. The smell of dinner clings to the fabric, sour and comforting at the same time. Your hands are greasy, your lips cracked and blackened. You lick the last bit of fat from your fingers and close your eyes. For a moment, the taste makes you think of warmth, of fire, of home. But the illusion fades quickly, replaced by the dull ache of cold creeping back in. You drift into half sleep. The sounds of the camp fade. The quiet coughs, the rustle of fabric, the faint crackle of dying fires. You dream of a feast that never ends, tables covered in food that doesn't rot or freeze. You see the sea, bright and blue, and you can smell spices in the air. Cinnamon, pepper, things worth more than gold. You reach for them, but your hands pass through smoke. The vision fades, replaced by snow. Always snow. When you wake again, the fire is out. Your stomach growls, empty already. You reach for your pack and find it lighter. Someone took your last piece of dried meat during the night. You sit there for a moment, staring into the dark, then laugh quietly. It doesn't matter. You'd have done the same. Up here, theft isn't crime. It's instinct. The sky begins to pale. Another day is waiting. You stand, stretch your frozen limbs, and stamp your feet until they stop feeling like stones. The mountain is still silent, still endless. You glance at the pot beside the ashes, the rim lined with grease turned solid overnight. You scrape a bit of it off with your finger and put it in your mouth. It tastes like smoke and metal, but it melts on your tongue, and for one fleeting second, it feels like life. You wipe your hand on your cloak, shoulder your pack, and start walking again. The path ahead is narrow, steep, and coated with ice. The wind starts to rise, carrying the familiar stench of burnt fat and frozen air. You breathe it in anyway. It's disgusting. It's real. And it's the only proof you have that you've made it through another meal, another night, another chance to keep moving. The army starts to climb again, leaving behind the fires, the bones, and the ghosts of dinner. You don't look back. There's nothing left to look at. Just snow, rock, and hunger, marching side by side. You wake because something feels wrong. At first you can't tell what it is. You're breathing, your heart is beating, and the cold is exactly where you left it. But your arms don't feel like arms anymore. They're heavy, numb, foreign. You try to move your fingers and get nothing. The panic comes slowly, creeping up your spine like the cold itself. You lift your hand toward your face and feel metal instead of flesh. Your glove is frozen stiff, your armour rimed with ice, and your body has become a single, solid piece of misery. You slept in it again. Of course you did. Everyone does now. Taking armour off means exposing yourself to the cold, and no one is brave enough to do that anymore. The punishment for comfort is death, and you've learned that lesson 100 times already. The metal plates that were supposed to protect you from spears and arrows are now the enemy. They press against your skin, leaching heat from your body all night long. When you finally move, the joints creak like a rusted gate. You sit up slowly, the leather straps pulling at your shoulders, your breath fogging against the inside of your helmet. You yank it off and shake the frost loose. Your hair sticks to the lining, frozen in clumps. You rub your scalp with both hands until you feel something close to sensation again. The air that hits your head burns like fire. The kind of burn that means you've gone numb for too long. You glance down. Your tunic beneath the armour is damp and stiff, soaked with sweat from yesterday's march and frozen solid overnight. It's like wearing a shirt made of thin ice and regret. The smell rising from it is something between wet leather, rot, and the faint tang of blood. You try not to breathe too deeply. Every soldier around you smells the same. A mix of decay and determination. You've all been marinating in your own exhaustion for weeks. You roll your shoulders, trying to loosen the joints. The metal grinds against itself. A flake of ice slides down your chest and disappears somewhere inside your tunic. You shiver violently. The armour feels heavier than usual, though it's not the weight that's killing you. It's the cold that hides inside it. Every time you move, it touches a new patch of skin and sends a jolt of pain shooting through you. You know if you take it off, it'll be worse. The sweat will freeze faster. The air will cut deeper. And by morning, you won't wake up again. A man nearby curses softly in Punic, clutching his hands. You look over and see him trying to flex his fingers. 2 of them don't respond. The tips are black. He shakes his hand violently, as if he can shake the death off it, but it doesn't work. Another man kneels beside him, tears a strip of cloth from his cloak, and wraps the hand tightly. It won't help much. Frostbite has its own rules, and mercy isn't one of them. You look down at your own hands, flex them just to be sure. They move, stiff and slow, but they move. The skin on your knuckles is cracked, pale around the edges, dark in the middle. You can't feel the fingertips anymore. You rub them together until the dull pain returns. It's a good sign. Pain means you're still alive. Around you, the camp begins to stir. Men groan as they sit up, the sound of metal shifting and leather stretching filling the air. It's like waking inside a blacksmith's forge, only colder and quieter. The fires are long dead. No one bothers relighting them. You all know the flames will just die again before breakfast. You stand, the armour pulling at your shoulders, your knees stiff and uncooperative. You stamp your feet, trying to get blood flowing again. The ground is frozen solid, your boots coated with a thin layer of ice that makes every step uncertain. You glance at the slope ahead, the next part of the climb. It looks like a wall of white, steep and cruel. Somewhere up there, Hannibal's scouts are marking the route, chipping foothold into the rock with picks that barely scratch the surface. You wonder how many of them are still alive. You start walking. The sound of hundreds of men moving in armour echoes through the pass, a steady clatter of iron and frost. It should sound like an army. Instead, it sounds like a funeral procession. The air is so thin that every breath feels like a punishment. You can taste blood in the back of your throat. Your lungs burn. You pull your cloak tighter over your armour, but it barely makes a difference. The cold still finds you. It always does. By midday, you stop to rest. You lean against a rock, the metal of your cuirass pressing into your ribs. You tilt your head back, staring at the pale sky. The sun looks weak, embarrassed to be here. You run a hand over your face and feel your beard, brittle, sharp, rimmed with frost. You remember when you used to shave. You remember soap, water, a mirror. It feels absurd now, like a story someone told you years ago. A voice calls out behind you. One of the younger soldiers has collapsed. His friends are trying to lift him, but his body has gone rigid. You walk over and help them turn him onto his back. His eyes are open, staring at the sky. His lips are blue. The metal plates of his armour are frosted white. You press a hand to his chest. There's no heartbeat. Someone mutters that he fell asleep while walking. It's easier that way, they say. You just get tired, stop shivering, and drift off. No noise, no pain. Just silence. You stand there for a moment, staring at him, then look away. The others remove his belt and cloak. No one speaks. The body stays where it falls. The mountain keeps its trophies. You move on. The wind picks up again, slicing through the gaps in your armour like knives. You hunch forward, clutching your cloak tighter. The edges of your helmet dig into your temples. Every breath you take fogs up the metal in front of your mouth, freezing instantly into a thin sheet of ice. You wipe it away with a gloved hand, but it returns with the next exhale. It's like breathing inside a cage. By the time the order comes to stop, the sun is already fading. You drop to the ground, every part of you aching. You don't bother removing anything. Not your helmet, not your greaves, not even your gloves. It's too much effort, and the air is already colder than it was yesterday. You just curl up where you are, pulling your cloak over your head. The ground beneath you feels harder than ever. You can't tell if it's rock or ice. It doesn't matter. You shift slightly to find a spot where your armour doesn't dig into your ribs, but it's useless. The plates press against you from every angle. You close your eyes and listen to the sounds around you. The creak of metal, the low murmurs of men trying to keep their spirits alive. Someone is singing softly, an old Carthaginian song about the sea. His voice is hoarse, almost gone, but the melody carries. It makes you think of home again, of warm nights and salt air. You try to remember what the sea sounds like. You can't. Sleep doesn't come easily. When it does, it's shallow and restless. You dream of heat again, but this time it's not the sun. It's fire. Armour melting, skin burning, the opposite of this cold. You wake with a start, your chest heaving, and realise the dream has made you sweat. The sweat freezes almost instantly, turning to ice beneath the plates. You shiver uncontrollably. You can feel the frost forming along your collar, creeping down your back like a living thing. You roll onto your side, trying to find a position that doesn't hurt. It's impossible. The armour digs into your hips, your knees, your spine. You think about taking it off, just for a few hours. The thought tempts you. You imagine the relief of unbuckling the straps, of feeling air on your skin again. Then you remember the man who froze to death after doing the same thing 2 nights ago. They found him in the morning, stiff and blue, arms still half in his sleeves. You pull your cloak tighter and decide to keep suffering. The cold works differently when you're wearing armour. It doesn't attack you all at once. It seeps in slowly, layer by layer, until you can't tell where the metal ends and your body begins. The frost grows along the edges of the plates, spreading like rust. You can hear it crackle when you move. You know it's killing you slowly, but you keep it on because dying slowly is better than dying fast. At some point, you hear someone whispering nearby. Two men are arguing quietly about whether to remove their boots. One says his feet are numb, that it can't get worse. The other tells him not to, that if he takes them off, he'll never get them back on. You don't intervene. You already know how that story ends. You close your eyes again, forcing yourself to breathe slowly. The air feels thicker now, heavier. You can smell smoke from a nearby fire, the faint tang of oil burning. It mixes with the sour scent of sweat and leather. It's awful, but somehow comforting. You think about how strange it is that this stench of survival has become home. When dawn finally comes, it's weak and colourless. You open your eyes and see frost on the inside of your cloak. Your armour is white with ice. You flex your arms and hear the metal crack. The sound is dull but satisfying. It means you can still move. You push yourself up, the plates shifting stiffly and stand. The world looks exactly the same as yesterday, white, endless and uncaring. You reach up and adjust your helmet. The rim has cut a thin line across your forehead where the skin froze and tore in the night. You don't bother wiping the blood. It will just freeze again. You look around at the others. They're doing the same. Stretching, adjusting, trying to remember how to be human inside all this armour. Someone nearby pulls off his glove to rub his hand, and a fingertip breaks open. The flesh underneath is black. He stares at it for a moment, then pulls the glove back on without a word. You know he won't last long. None of you will if this keeps up. But no one says it. Words take energy, and energy is something none of you can afford. You pick up your spear, sling your shield over your back, and start walking again. The sound of armour moving fills the air once more. The slow, rhythmic grind of survival. You don't think about the cold anymore. You just move. That's all there is left to do. And as the line of soldiers snakes its way up the mountain, you realise something strange. The armour that's been killing you all night is the only thing keeping you up right now. It's heavy, yes, and cruel, but it's familiar. It's yours. The frost, the weight, the pain, they've become part of you. You keep walking, each step loud, deliberate, echoing against the cliffs. The wind howls, the snow crunches, and your body creaks like a walking monument to misery. You don't look back. There's nothing behind you worth seeing. Only cold, death, and the ghosts of warmth long gone. And so, you march on, a man-shaped statue of ice and iron, too stubborn to die, too cold to live, carrying what's left of Carthage across a mountain that refuses to care. You wake to a weight against your back that wasn't there when you closed your eyes. At first, you think it's a drift of snow, or a collapsed bit of the cloak you pulled over your shoulders, something harmless that you can shrug off and ignore. Then the weight shifts. Doesn't move exactly, just settles. Heavy in that way only a human body does, when all the small muscles stop trying. You don't turn around immediately. You know what it is. Everybody knows what it is. The night was colder than the one before, and the mountain didn't take long to make its choice. Your breath fogs and disappears in front of your face. The air smells like wet wool and old smoke. The wind has dropped for once. Not mercifully, just strategically, as if saving its strength for later. You pull your knees closer to your chest and feel the edge of your greave bite your thigh. The armour is just as hateful as ever. The ground under you is rigid and uneven, where yesterday's melt froze into ridges. Your hip bones are learning every shape the Alps can invent. The body behind you presses a little closer as the snow sags. There's no warmth left in him, there won't be, but he blocks the air that slides down the slope and rolls through the camp like water. You resist the instinct to inch away. Distance is luxury. Up here, you take the windbreak and stop thinking about the rest. When you finally turn your head, frost has lined your eyelashes and your eyelids stick for a second before they peel apart. The man's face rests near your shoulder, mouth slightly open, teeth dark in the grey light. His eyes are shut. Someone did that? You're grateful for it. The skin looks tight and pale, where the cold has pulled it thin. Frost crusts the corners of his beard like spilled salt. He's younger than you. Most of the ones who die at night are. The older men are stubborn, the young are tired. You reach out with one hand, more habit than respect, and pat the cloak where it covers his chest. The fabric is stiff with ice. You check pockets automatically. A little leather charm, a twist of sinew, a wedge of frozen barley paste wrapped in cloth that has fused to it. You leave the food. It's more frost than grain, and you're not hungry enough to gnaw ice this early. The charm you take, not because you want it, but because he doesn't. You tuck it inside your own cloak, where it won't make a hard spot against your ribs. Around you, the camp stirs the way it always does, quietly, like a field of animals that know making noise summons predators. Men sit up in jerks as their joints unlock. Someone coughs the kind of cough that has a rattle at the end. A voice farther off calls a name twice, then stops. There's a scrape of metal where a helmet's rim sheds its frost. The dawn is the same grey it's been since you climbed above the last line of sensible trees. The light up here doesn't feel like day. It's just the night admitting it needs to catch its breath. To your right, 2 men are already at work, with stiff fingers and a length of leather thong, pulling another body over so the back faces the wind. They wedge a shield beneath it to keep the corpse from rolling downhill and sliding into whomever is unlucky enough to be sleeping in the lee. The mouth is open on that one. No one closes it. There's no time for neat endings. You push yourself to sitting. Your blanket, really just a tired piece of hide with a history, snaps where it's stuck to the ground and tears a little. You fold it over your legs anyway. The dead man behind you slumps into the space you leave and stays there, an uncomplaining wall. You don't bother with a fire. Everyone tried that yesterday. You can still see black pits in the snow where optimism turned to ash and then to nothing. A young Iberian, boy really, though the mountain doesn't care, edges carefully between 2 sleeping shapes and plops down beside you. He looks at the body, looks at you, then leans his back against the same corpse you just abandoned. He grunts as the weight settles. Blocks the draft, he mutters, like he's telling himself more than you. You nod. He pulls his cloak tighter and tucks his hands into his armpits. His fingers are bandaged with something dark that used to be cloth. He keeps his eyes on the snow, because that's easier than looking at faces. The officers have stopped pretending there are rules for any of this. There were rules back where trees grew and rivers made sense, about burial, about respect, about how long you waited before you took a dead man's boots. Here the rule is, if it helps someone live till noon, do it. You've seen sandals peeled off feet that froze in them. You've seen gloves transferred, belts cut shorter, a helmet traded for a strip of elephant hide because metal eats heat and leather only drinks it. The sermons about honour stayed in Spain with the figs and wine. A pair of handlers shuffle past with a rope between them. On it trail 3 bodies, tied by the ankles, sliding along the crust the way wood slides when men are too tired to lift it. They're taking them to the edge, not to throw them, not yet. The cliff is for the ones who fall, not the ones who stayed and died like obedient soldiers. The handlers will line these along a rock wall and leave them upright to harden. Later, if the wind picks up, someone will move a sleeping line behind them. You learned on the second night that a frozen man stops being a man and starts being a fence. There's no decorum to the arranging. You pick by shape. Big backs for the outer ring, narrower bodies to fit between, a man with a thick cloak, if you can manage it, because the fabric catches snow. And snow is sometimes kinder than air. The first time you did it, your stomach turned until it cramped. Now your hands work while your head floats somewhere else, someplace warmer that doesn't exist. You learn to sit the bodies with knees up so the snow piles against shins and makes a kind of low wall. You lean shields at angles to bridge gaps. You pack slush into cracks with your forearms. It's like building the world's saddest parapet. An older Gaul, with half his moustache, rimed white, lifts a dead man's arm and tucks it back in. Don't leave it out, he says to no one in particular. It snags cloaks when the wind yanks. He says it like a man who already learned the hard way and isn't interested in a second lesson. He settles the hand across the chest, pats it twice, and moves on. You spend the morning that way, because marching hasn't started yet, and because the column ahead is still carving a path around a spill of rocks that looks like it decided to happen just to be difficult. Men work in silence, except for the occasional instruction or grunt. The only laughter you hear is nervous and dies as soon as it's born. The mountain is an efficient teacher. It tells you what you can do and what you can't. You can't dig graves. You can move snow. You can stack shields. You can seat the dead, where the living might get a little less murdered, by the air. When the order to move finally skims down the line, you shrug your pack higher and take one last look at the little wall you helped build. From this angle, it could almost pass for a row of men sitting to rest, heads bowed, shoulders hunched. The snow is kind enough to blur the edges. Someone has tucked a scrap of blue cloth into one of the belts, not as a flag, just because it was there and the belt needed tightening. You wonder what will happen to the wall by nightfall, whether the wind will knock it flat, or the next unit will have the sense to camp in its lee and not ask questions. The day, like all of them, is a study in slippery surfaces and the breathing practices of men who can't get enough air. You move because stopping hurts more. You stop because moving becomes impossible. You learn how to lean without falling, and how to fall without sliding. Hunger stays with you like a jealous friend. Thirst now comes from a place beyond your throat. It's in your skin, which has decided it never wants to be dry again. When you lick your lips, you taste salt and iron, and the memory of whatever you ate last night that you hope you won't have to identify later. When the light finally loses patience and slides off the ridges, someone ahead blows the little brass trumpet that means this misery here. You drop where you stand because there isn't anywhere else to drop. Once again the ritual begins. You kick snow with the side of your boot to level a space the size of your body. You scout with your eyes for lumps that could be a rock or a frozen man. If it's a rock, you nudge it aside. If it's a man, you pull gently on a shoulder to feel whether he was recent enough to be moved or has already gone to stone. The ones from yesterday are best. They'll shift with persuasion. The ones from last week don't bend for anyone. Tonight you get 3. 1 to your left, 1 to your right, 1 behind. You place them without words with the men next to you, like you're working a task no one explained, but everyone knows. A Numidian with a scar along his jaw shows you a trick he learned 2 nights ago. Angle the shoulders a little forward so the dead lean into you, not away. He says it keeps the wind from finding the pocket between your neck and cloak. He's right. You thank him without using your mouth. There's no air for gratitude. From somewhere downslope comes the wet thud of a body hitting a drift. Someone misjudged a pull. There's a murmur and then quiet again. You can tell who's new to the practice because they keep trying to speak like this is wrong in a way that can be fixed by saying so. The veterans have run out of sentences. The mountain isn't listening either way. You hunch down. The corpse to your right has a cloak still on him, a rough weave that catches the weak light and holds a little snow the way a hedge holds leaves. You tuck the edge of your own cloak under his arm, pinning it there, and feel the air settle. It's not warm, it's just less cold, and less cold up here is what other people remember as mercy. A smell rises that wasn't there before, sweet and sour at the same time. It's what happens when sweat that never got to evaporate decides it's going to rot instead. Even if the thermometer insists everything should have stopped doing that weeks ago. You breathe shallowly and keep your nose tucked under the corner of your cloak. If you push the fabric up over your mouth, the steam from your breath freezes to it, and the next inhale drags fibres into your throat. You learned that the hard way 3 nights back, and spent the morning coughing hair like a cat. The boy from earlier, he settled 2 slots down from you, wedged between a grey-haired Sicilian and a shield propped on a mule pack. He's shivering in little jerks that knock ice off his helmet. You can see the trembling even in the dim light. You reach across the dead man between you and tap the boy's shin with your knuckles. He looks over. You jerk your chin once. Closer. He hesitates, then understands, and scoots until his hip touches your thigh. You share heat the way poor people share bread. A little each, no speeches. People take watches, not for enemies, but for the things that slide when you forget to look at them. A flat head of snow above can choose this hour to decide it has somewhere else to be, and you want to be awake enough to put your cheek on the dirt if it does. The watch tonight belongs to a Gaul with a broken nose who keeps humming to himself. Something low and repetitive that is less a tune than a method for keeping the lungs moving. Every few minutes, his shadow leans over to push more snow into the cracks around your little wall, adjusting knees and elbows until the line looks solid again. He pats shoulders when he's done, the way a mother checks blankets. He does it to the living and the dead with equal care. Nobody comments. Sleep isn't a door you go through. It's a slope with gravel on it. You scoot downward and then catch yourself, then scoot again. When it arrives, it's not restful. It's a series of blanknesses you fall into, separated by moments when you jerk awake because your foot forgot how to have blood, or your hand forgot it was attached. You keep your jaw clenched, because if your teeth start chattering again, the sound will crawl inside your ears and scratch at your patience until it breaks. At some point in the night, a hand finds your shoulder. It is as hard as wood. Your body flinches before your brain remembers, say, that it's the man to your left settling where gravity says he has to be. Your right hand goes to your knife on reflex. You've done that every night since the ambush in the lower pass, and then releases it when the hand stops. You leave your palm on the hilt anyway. Habit has become religion, and this one's cod demands fingers near iron. Later, a different sound interrupts. The soft, hungry snuffle of something with better fur than you will ever own. A fox, maybe, or something that only looks like a fox in this light. It circles once, noses the boy's boot, decides there's no point, and vanishes into the curve of the slope, as if the snow opened for it and closed again. You hate it for leaving. You forgive it for knowing how. When you wake next, your cheek is pressed to the curve where a dead man's shoulder meets his neck. The skin is grainy with frost, and for a second you don't know who's alive. You pull back carefully so you don't collapse the space you've built. Your face hurts in that too deep way, the kind that means you'll carry this ache to Italy if you get that far. You shift your weight and feel the dead man lean with you, as if he still bothers to be polite. Somewhere above, the wind starts its rehearsal, and then quits. The silence that follows is the heaviest thing you've lifted all day. The smell of fat rolls past. Someone found enough patience to boil scraps into soup again, and rides low along the ground, seeping under cloaks the way water does. You could be sick from it. You could be comforted by it. It depends which memory wins the race to your mouth. You watch the sky for a while. The stars are there, unbothered. Men say the same stars look down on Carthage and Rome, and the strip of beaten earth between, and that feels like something a priest might use to get you to move stones for him. Up here, the stars only prove that the roof isn't on fire. The boy's shivering slows and finally stops. For a terrible instant, you think he's become trouble of the permanent kind. You reach across and press your fingers against the spot under his jaw where the old soldier taught you a pulse lives. There it is, small and rude, banging away at life like it's getting paid by the blow. You rub his forearm and leave your hand there longer than you meant to, borrowing the proof for yourself. Time, which hasn't done you many favours lately, hands you a thin slice of stillness. In it, you let your shoulders slack. You don't fall asleep exactly. You fall apart a little in a way that doesn't lose pieces you need. Your thoughts go where they always go when you let them. The harbour, a bowl of olives, a sister's voice, the skinned knee smell of sun-hot stone. They don't stay. The mountain doesn't permit daydream squatting, but they visit, and that's something. When the first ribbon of not night unrolls along the ridge, nobody says morning. Morning implies choices like bread or porridge, or which shoes, and whether to take the longer road because it's prettier. What arrives is light you can see your hands by, and the accountability that comes with it. Men who look like lumps become men again. The wall of bodies becomes what it is. An arrangement. A decision. The boy's eyes open. He wipes his mouth with the back of his glove and pretends he didn't. You start extricating yourself. It's like loosening stones in a wall without collapsing it. You untuck your cloak from under the dead man's arm, press him forward with your shoulder so you can free the hem, and let him lean back into place. You push snow into the gap you leave, so the wind won't immediately sprint into the camp, and slap the man on the other side awake. You stand, and your knees make a sound you don't love. The world bleaches for a second at the edges while blood remembers how to be useful. You wait for the black dots to move out of the way. They do slowly with attitude. The Gaul with the broken nose limps through, checking lines, squinting at faces. He points to 3 bodies and jerks his head toward the rock outcrop where the handlers do their work. 2 men step in, take ankles, and slide the cargo away. The movement leaves shallow grooves in the snow. A third man, Roman coin hung crooked at his neck, for luck or irony, collects a belt, 2 knives, and a small copper charm shaped like a fish. He wipes each on the inside of his cloak before handing them on. Somewhere, once, a priest explained why that mattered. Up here, it just keeps the metal from freezing to your skin when you need it. Before the column forms, you take one more pass along the line of bodies and adjust a head that has listed into a posture that will snag cloaks and trip boots. You don't do it for him. He's past tripping. You do it because you might sleep here again tonight, and you'd like not to be the fool who gets yanked awake by the world's rudest hook. When the signal to move comes thin and small across the snow, you roll your shoulders, hear the armour argue, and step away from the little fortress you slept in. The boy falls in behind you without asking. The wind takes a half-hearted swipe at your cheek and decides it can do better later. You don't look back. There's nothing to see that you didn't already touch. You march. The mountain pretends not to notice. Your feet find the bad places and then forgive them. Somewhere on the air rides a film of scent that clings to everything now. Smoke that never burned long enough. Sweat that never got to dry. Fat that burned too fast. It moves with the column, like a banner no one asked to carry. You breathe shallowly and keep it anyway. You'll need it later when the air turns on you again, and you go looking for anything that says you're still here. You wake to the smell before you wake to the light. It crawls into your head first, thick and oily, a mixture of smoke, sweat, and something that used to be alive but isn't anymore. It doesn't hit you all at once. It arrives in layers, each one worse than the last. First the charred tang of burnt wood, then the sour bite of unwashed bodies, then the greasy sweetness of animal fat gone rancid in the cold. You've smelled death for weeks now, but this is different. This is what happens when death gets cooked. You open your eyes and the world looks the same as always. Grey sky, white ground, the occasional patch of dark rock poking through like the bones of the earth. The air is still, but heavy. Smoke clings to it, thick enough that you can see the colour of it. Brown, not black, the kind that comes from wet fires and bad fuel. You cough once, and it tastes like grease. The wind should have carried it away hours ago, but the mountain has decided to trap it here with you, pressing it down into the camp until every breath feels borrowed. You sit up slowly. The armour creaks against your body, the straps stiff and sticky with sweat that never had a chance to dry. Your cloak smells like everything you've done to survive. Dirt, smoke, animal fat, blood. You can't remember what clean smells like anymore. Maybe nothing. Maybe silence. Someone nearby is tending a fire. The wood isn't wood anymore. It's pieces of broken wagons, scraps of harness, the splinters of crates that once carried grain. It burns badly, the smoke thick and angry. You can see the flames fighting for air, licking at something dark that spits and hisses. The sound is low and wet, like meat cooking in its own fat. You don't ask what it is. You already know. You pull yourself closer to the fire anyway. The heat is uneven, half blocked by smoke, but it's there, and that's enough. You hold your hands out, palms open, fingers shaking. The warmth barely reaches you before it's gone again, stolen by the air. You turn your hands over and see the dirt worked into the cracks of your knuckles, the black soot rubbed into the skin until it's part of you now. The man tending the fire is Gaulish. One of Hannibal's veterans, older, quieter, with a face that looks carved from the same rock you're sitting on. He doesn't speak. He just prods the burning mass with a stick, turning it, keeping it from going out. The smell grows stronger. You don't look directly at what's cooking. You can tell from the sound that it's thick, skin, maybe, or bone. Something that shouldn't be burning does. The grease hisses when it hits the coals, sending small bursts of flame into the air. The smoke rolls across the camp, low and stubborn, coating everything in a thin layer of ash. You pull your cloak over your mouth to breathe. It helps a little, but not enough. The inside of the fabric smells like your own sweat. You try to breathe through that instead of the smoke, but there's no winning here. Everything smells like survival, and survival isn't pleasant. You watch as another soldier approaches the fire, a small pot in hand. He squats, scoops up a bit of the melted fat pooling at the base of the flames, and pours it into the pot. You can see his hands shaking. He mutters something, maybe thanks, maybe a curse, then adds a handful of snow. The hiss that follows sounds like relief. He stirs it with a stick until it turns into something like soup, then takes a careful sip. His eyes close. He swallows hard, wipes his mouth, and hands the pot to the next man. The grease floats on top, shimmering. It smells like roasted leather. You can't help it. Your stomach twists, not from disgust, but from hunger. You've eaten worse in the last week. Pieces of hide boiled until soft, horse marrow scraped from frozen bones, snow flavoured with ash. You hold out your hand when the pot reaches you. The soldier passes it over without a word. The metal is hot against your fingers. You take a sip. It burns your tongue and tastes exactly like it smells. Fat, smoke, and salt from the sweat that's worked its way into everything you touch. It coats your throat, leaving a greasy film behind. You drink another sip anyway. It's warm, and that's all you care about. When you hand the pot back, the soldier nods once. That's as close to conversation as anyone gets these days. You both stare into the fire, watching the flames devour the last of whatever was burning. The smell lingers, refusing to die even after the fuel's gone. You'll still smell it on your hands tonight, on your armour tomorrow, maybe for the rest of your life. If there's a rest of your life. The wind shifts, just slightly, and the smoke rolls toward the line of elephants at the edge of camp. You can hear them shifting, groaning, snorting through trunks that steam in the cold. Their handlers wave their arms, shouting in frustration. The animals hate the smoke. It stings their eyes, clogs their breath. One trumpets weakly, a sound that bounces off the rocks and comes back hollow. You watch as a handler throws a pail of snow on the nearest fire, killing it instantly. The air fills with the hiss of steam and the stink of half-burnt fat. Someone shouts a warning about keeping the fires small. The wood's too scarce, and the smoke draws attention. As if there's anyone left up here to be drawn. The words disappear into the wind before they reach half the camp. No one answers. Everyone's too tired to argue about anything that doesn't kill them immediately. You rub your eyes, smearing soot across your face. It feels gritty, like sand. You remember the sand of home, Carthage, the beaches, the sun so bright it hurt to look at the sea. The smell back then was different. Salt, oil, life. You try to hold on to that memory, but it slips away, replaced by this. The reek of coal sweat and smoke. The stink of desperation burned into every inch of you. You exhale slowly and taste it again in your mouth. It's not just on your skin now. It's inside you. The day moves forward, slow as everything does up here. The fires die down, leaving trails of thin smoke that drift lazily across the camp. The air never clears completely. It carries the memory of burning long after the flames are gone. When the wind picks up again, it doesn't smell clean. It smells like what's left of all the things you've killed to stay alive. You find yourself staring at the smoke curling from a dying fire, mesmerized by how it moves. It twists and bends, reaching for the sky, but never getting there. You think of souls, though you don't believe in that sort of thing anymore. You've seen too many men die for the air to mean anything sacred. Still, the thought stays with you. The idea that maybe some part of what's burning is human, that every breath you take carries a piece of someone who didn't make it through the night. You laugh under your breath at how morbid that sounds, then stop because it's probably true. By afternoon, the smell has settled into the fabric of everything. Your cloak, your gloves, even the snow under your boots, all of it reeks. You've stopped noticing most of the time, but when the wind shifts just right, it hits you fresh, and it feels like the mountain itself is exhaling rot. You wonder if the Romans down there will smell you coming before they see you. The thought almost makes you smile. Evening comes without a sunset. The light just fades until the world turns grey again. The fires start up once more, small and mean, the smoke rising in crooked lines that vanish into the dark. You sit near one with a few others, passing around a small lump of something that might once have been meat. It smells like everything else: smoke, sweat, and burnt fat. You chew it slowly, letting it sit on your tongue until it softens. You can't tell where the flavour ends and the air begins. You stare into the fire until your eyes sting from the smoke. The flames dance, small and stubborn, refusing to die even though they should. You respect that. You feel a kind of kinship with it. You've been burning yourself for weeks now. Not literally, not yet, but inside, slow and steady. Every step up this mountain has peeled away something that used to make you human, and now you're just what's left when everything unnecessary is gone. The smoke thickens again. You blink through it, eyes watering, throat raw. The man across from you coughs, spits black into the snow, then shrugs. No one flinches. You wipe your own nose with the back of your hand and realise your glove is streaked dark. You don't care. It'll freeze in a few minutes anyway. When the fires start to fade, you lie down again, wrapping yourself tight in your cloak. The air is thick and foul, but it's warmer than clean air would be. You close your eyes and breathe slowly. Every inhale brings the same smell: smoke, sweat, burnt fat, and somehow it's become comforting. It means there's still life, still heat, still movement. You drift in and out of sleep, half dreaming, half awake. The smell never leaves you. It crawls into your hair, your clothes, your lungs. You'll carry it down the mountain, across the plains, maybe all the way to Italy if you make it. It'll cling to you like a second skin, long after the snow and the fear are gone. When you wake again, the fire is out. The camp is silent. The air still smells the same. It always will. You sit up, stretch, and look around at the faint outlines of men curled under cloaks. Smoke still rising from the last of the embers. The snow reflects the dull light of morning. Somewhere behind you, the elephant's grown again. You breathe in deeply, out of habit more than anything, and taste the world you've been living in. Sweat, smoke, and burnt fat. It's awful, but it's yours. You stand, shake the frost from your cloak, and get ready to march again. The smell follows you as you move, clinging to the air, marking every step you take down the mountain that has refused to let you forget what you've done to survive. You wake before the light reaches the snow. The cold has found the soft place between your shoulder and your neck again, and it aches the way an old story aches when someone says the first line out loud. Your jaw is tight from clenching in your sleep. Your breath comes out as a thin rag of fog and disappears. You've learned not to move all at once. First the fingers. Find the knife hilt. Find the seam of the cloak. Make sure both are where you left them. Then the toes. See if they still remember you. Then the little tilt of the head to check the dead man you propped as a windbreak, to be sure he hasn't slid and opened a door for the air to come through and take the heat you saved. You lie still again and listen. The camp is a collection of small sounds that you know too well. Someone rubbing their hands together under a cloak until the fabric squeaks. Leather creaking as a man tries to roll his shoulder without letting the plate over it pry loose the warmth. A cough with weight at the end. The small crunches that mean a fox has found something to doubt and then accept. Farther off, a plank from a broken wagon shifts and thumps as the night's frost finishes the job the last storm began. No talking yet. Words cost warmth, and no one is rich. You shouldn't let your mind wander. Wandering minds are like wandering feet up here. They slip, and suddenly there's a long way to fall, but the cold has a way of knocking doors open you meant to keep shut. The smell that lives in your cloak, smoke, sweat, old fat, thins for a breath, and through the gaps something else slides in, something you didn't invite and don't dare refuse. Carthage arrives the way the sun used to arrive, by touching everything and naming it. You don't stand in it. You lie where you are on stone that has forgotten about kindness, and Carthage just happens inside your head with the confidence of a place that assumes you missed it. The heat is not a blanket. It is law. It stands in the streets like a guard. It sits on the harbour wall and watches ships come and go with purple painted eyes. It turns the skin on your shoulders brown and your sandals slick with salt and dust. It throws a hum over the market that you can feel in your teeth. Merchants and porters and girls with trays shouting figs in a voice that knows how to be sweet and not waste time. You smell it first, as always. Olive oil and crushed herb, sun-baked rope, fish that have not yet learned to smell like failure. The Cothon glitters like it knows it is an invention smarter than a mountain. The inner circle with its neat bays, each with its ship and its shadow. The Admiral's Island at the middle like the pupil of an eye that never blinks. Tar and pitch and cedar shavings are thick on the air, and beyond all of it, the brine gets into your mouth and reminds your tongue what it was built for. You walk in your mind, though your legs out here are still folded like cold tools, up the slope to the Byrsa, where the stone holds heat long after sundown, and the walls make a sound when you lean against them. Tiny ticks of expansion, the city growing a fraction under your hand. You make the turn by the man who sells pressed dates and finds ways to tell the same 3 jokes to men who have heard them 100 times and still pretend to be surprised. You pass the dye works and put your hand over your nose the way you always did, even though you grew up with the stink and it never killed you. Murex is money and smells like punishment. That's a truth a child learns without a priest. You pass the presses where green fruit becomes a gold that burns in light. The boys with their legs stained to the knee. The women who tie their hair up with a bit of twine they will always be able to find. And the men who can never find anything without swearing at it first. Names walk in front of you like they used to when you ran errands, when your life was a string, you wound around handholds without thinking. Salambo Street, the lower baths, the shop with the cracked amphora painted with a fish whose eye never looks exactly at you. The baths. Gods, the baths. You didn't go every day. Only men with time did that. But the first step down into the hippocust warmth, that fog of breath and eucalyptus, and the blunt human smell that is not shame but proof. That was a kind of prayer that even men who didn't pray could make. You keep yourself there longer than you should. You sit on warm stone with your eyes closed and let the heat come into the bones of your face and the backs of your hands. You would go home like this, staggering a little from the heat and the thump of a friendly fist on your shoulder, skin sweet with oil, and scrubbed until it remembered it was skin. Your mother, if she was in the courtyard, would make that small approving sound women make when a task is finished and the world is briefly in order. If she wasn't, you would steal an olive and accept the slap on the back of your head when she caught you, always pretending not to see the smile arrive with the slap. There is the temple too, because of course there is. The city is alive with gods that look like men, and gods that don't. You were never the kind that bought extra doves on a whim, and the priests made you itch where your scalp always itched. But even you bowed your head sometimes when the air changed with the presence of belief. The women laid out their offerings and did not look at anyone. The men looked at everyone and pretended it was nothing. The smoke went up. It smelled like approval to those who needed that smell. You could always find a coin for Tanit on the days when the sea was gentle and your temper was not. Heat is everywhere in this memory, and all of it is different from the heat that comes out of a bad fire and onto raw knuckles in a pass with a name you'll forget when you leave it. There's the heat from a clay oven where flatbread kisses the wall and comes away spotted and proud, and you tear it and put something salty on it and burn your fingers and swear and grin because you were not born to be careful. There's the heat that lives in the alley in the 6th hour when the wind takes its own nap, the kind that makes a man stand still and drink water like a job. There's the heat on a shoulder where a girl rested her hand and left it there 1 heartbeat longer than courtesy required. There's the heat inside wine that wasn't as good as the seller said, and didn't need to be. You catalogued them like a soldier inventories his kit, 'cause up here you inventory whatever keeps your mind walking upright. The weight of a ripe fig in your palm, the slick shine it leaves when your thumb opens it, the way a date sticks to your teeth and sweetens the water you drink after, the taste of garum at the back of a stew that had no business being memorable and somehow still is, the light on bronze when the sun makes a lie of blemishes, the noise a sail makes when it is so full of wind that it stops sounding like cloth and starts sounding like an animal trying to outrun itself. The words come back with the heat. The right names for small things you haven't had to say in weeks. The Punic little oaths that fit between larger sentences and make them feel like conversation instead of announcement. The rhythm of a market when you are there to buy, not to pass through with a spear and a set of orders that are never the last orders. A neighbour calling you by the name your family uses, and not the one the sergeant shouts when he wants you to move faster than a sensible man would move. You close your eyes harder, as if you can press the picture in until it stays behind your lids when you open them. Your cheek has warmed the 2 inches of cloak it touches, and your brain, traitor that it is, borrows that warmth and insists it belongs to the rest of you. You can feel Carthage on your face. If you were a poet, which you are not, you'd say the city has leaned down to breathe on you. If you were a priest, which you are not, you'd say some god has a hand on your head. You're a man in the snow who used to be a boy in the sun, and that is sermon and verse enough. Voices begin to collect at the edges of the morning. Not many, not loud. Men murmur in the way of men who slept badly and woke early, and do not want to be told they did either. Someone mutters a joke shaped like a knife and doesn't push it deep. Someone else answers with a sound that could be a laugh if it had meat on it. The boy you kept alive with a hip and a nudge breathes more evenly now. He's not dreaming of Carthage. He has his own heat to go find. A village with mud that warms in summer, and a river that remembers him by name. Heat is where you first learn to sit with your knees apart, because boys do that, where the old dog sleeps in the only patch of shade in the yard, and opens one eye when you step over him. He'll find that, and you'll find yours, and for a little while the snow will have to wait its turn. You let yourself walk one more street, down from the Bürse, with the wind at your back because the walls teach it manners up there. Past the jar seller who leans his amphorae in pairs, the way soldiers lean, touching but pretending not to. Across the square, where a man with a lute is insisting the song he wrote yesterday is an old one and everybody knows it, and for a coin he'll remind you how it goes. Left at the stall, where a woman grills small fish and folds them into bread with a squeeze of lemon you didn't pay for. The bite burns your tongue. You blow through your teeth and laugh because you looked foolish, and she looks pleased to have made you foolish. There is a courtyard you can be in if you want. You can stand in the doorway and watch the slant of light. Be careful with the edges of a bowl on a table. Someone has swept, and the water they used has made a dark star on the clay. A lizard watches from the wall, like it will report you if you steal anything. There is a jar with a crack the exact length of your index finger. There is a voice from the next room that rises and falls with a tusk. There is an argument about nothing that smells like oil and ends with a sound that means these people are not clever, but they are kind. There is a place on the threshold where you stopped growing taller. You let it go. You have to. Up here, the mountain wants rent, and the currency is attention. If you forget where you are, you pay with something you can't keep a ledger for. You let Carthage step back into the room it waits in. You close the door gently enough not to wake whoever is still sleeping there. Your cheek is cold again. Your fingers rediscover their stiffness and their work. The dead man you used as a wall is still where you left him. You ease your cloak out from under his arm and pack snow where your body warmed it, because you don't want the wind finding that new little road and inviting itself in later. The boy blinks and pretends he was awake. You nod like you pretend back. Someone up the line tries a trumpet and gets a flat note that wouldn't call a dog, let alone an army. He tries again and finds the sound that means not yet, but soon. You sit up all the way and the world does its brief trick, where the edges go dark and then remember to be edges again. You rub your eyes, and soot obediently moves from glove to eyelid to cheek. Your breath is a saw working through soft wood. You roll your shoulders and hear the armour complain, because it believes in complaining the way priests believe in incense. Around you men are doing the same work of returning, counting the small pieces that prove they are still themselves. A coin, a bit of cord, a scrap of blue cloth tied to a belt, because the man who wore it once said it kept him from making small mistakes. A charm shaped like a fish that doesn't listen but helps anyway. They tuck these away where they won't bruise them during the march. A man who grew up on a coast you'll never see spits into his palms and rubs them together the way his father taught him before lifting anything heavy. You would swear that makes his hands warmer than yours. You stand. Your knees have strong opinions. The light has flattened the camp into a plain of dull grey, and the smoke from last night has decided to be a cloud that stays low and smells like memory that turned. You breathe in, and the Alps come back in the way they always do, by refusing to be anything else. The heat sits just behind your eyes now, where it can't be stolen, the way a secret sits when it belongs to you, and not to the man who told it. You step into the line. The boy falls in behind you and checks the knots on his pack with fingers that haven't entirely forgiven him. You glance once along the row of bodies you used as a wall and fix a slumped head so it won't catch anyone's cloak if you have to sleep here again. The trumpet finds the other note, the one that means now, whether you deserve now or not. The column leans forward as one animal with 1,000 legs and not enough lungs. As you start, the wind climbs the pass to see if it remembers you. You keep Carthage where you can feel it and not where it can trip you. You taste salt that isn't there. You carry the heat like men carry water when a jar is not full enough to drink yet, but too precious to spill. You know the day will be what the last ones were. White, and then white with problems, and then white with teeth. You also know that when the light slides off the ridges again, and the cold comes to collect, you will lie down and pay with the small change you have left. And before you give it all, you will go home for a while, because a man who has a place to stand in his head sometimes finds a way to stand on his feet. Someone in the line hums a tune that wasn't taught to you and still makes sense. The boy behind you whispers a word you don't know and doesn't have to translate. You take one step and then another, and then you stop counting because numbers are for markets and you are not at a market. The mountain breathes its thin, indifferent breath. You answer with your own. The heat you kept answers too, quietly, like a promise that does not need to be clever to be true. You wake to a colour you don't have a name for. Not black, not grey. Something thin that lets you see the outline of your own breath, and the pale ridge of your knuckles where the skin has split. The cold comes first as always, a fact that settles on your ribs and weighs them down. Your jaw is clenched. Your tongue tastes like iron and old smoke. You haven't moved yet because movement is a conversation with pain, and pain always has more to say than you do. You lie still and listen to the camp announce itself. Small noises stitched together into proof that the army still exists. Leather flexing. A strap complaining. Snow moving under someone's elbow. The low hush of a man who can't stop coughing, even when he tries to be quiet about it. You test your fingers one at a time. They answer, late but present. You find your knife by the hilt without looking and then let it go. You feel for the hem of your cloak, tuck it tighter, then angle your shoulder to check the dead man you used as a wall through the night. He's where you left him, tilted slightly forward so he leaned into your heat instead of pulling it away. The boy on your other side breathes steady. You feel it through the strip of shared blanket like the sea you dream about when you aren't careful. You keep your eyes closed a moment longer because dawn up here is a trickster, and you want to choose when it wins. When you do open them, the world has flattened into that almost light that admits shapes but not colours. The snow has smoothed over everything you thought you knew last night. The little wall you built out of bodies looks like a low drift until you notice the right angles of elbows and the curve of a shoulder under crust. Your breath unrolls in a thin banner and vanishes. The wind is elsewhere for now, and the silence it leaves sits heavy, as if the mountain is holding it down with one hand. You sit up, careful not to collapse the packed snow that kept air from creeping under your cloak. Your armour answers with a slow crackle as frost breaks along the straps. You pull your knees up, feel the edge of a greave press into bone, roll your shoulders until the plates settle where they have learned to live. Around you, men rise in pieces. No one wastes words on good mornings. Dawn means accounting. Counting men, counting animals, counting breaths, counting how much you can carry before the slope argues more convincingly than your legs. Dawn also means seeing farther than you want. You look beyond the camp, and the pass opens like a mouth that leads into another mouth. Ridges stacked behind ridges. The line you thought was the horizon yesterday turns out to be only the lip of a bowl with another bowl beyond it. The faint brightness on the eastern faces of the peaks doesn't feel like sunrise. It feels like the mountain going through a list and deciding what to keep. Your heart beats a little harder at that sight. Not fear exactly, not surprise, just the tired understanding that you had been hoping, against what you've learned, that the path might soften where the light touched it. It doesn't. Someone farther up tries the trumpet and gets a thin sound that dies a few paces from his mouth. He tries again. The note catches and spreads along the column in small echoes as men pass it on with gestures and short calls. Not moving yet. Soon. The word soon has become elastic. It can mean in a dozen breaths or after the sun has lost interest. You start your own little checklist. Boots, still on, still cracked. Hands, swollen, but the pain means they remember being part of you. Face, tender along the cut the helmet rim made yesterday. Eyes, sting at the first pull of air that doesn't smell like another man's cloak. You tie the same knots you tied last night, because you trust knots you saw made today more than the ones you made when you were too cold to make sense. You take stock of the ground under you. The snow where you lay is glossy with your heat, then white again 2 palms away. You pack it with your fist so it settles. You adjust the head of the dead man you leaned on and push snow into the hollow your shoulder made. You do it for the living, who will sleep here tonight. Maybe for yourself. Maybe because your hands need tasks that have beginnings and endings. The boy starts to stir. He pretends he was already awake. You pretend to believe him. You nod at the place where the snow thinned, and he understands without a word, kicking at it until the surface is flat again. The handlers drag last night's losses gently by the ankles, faces turned away. It isn't disrespect. It's triage for the eyes. They line the bodies with the others under the rock shelf, set them upright so they don't slide, cross arms to keep cloaks from catching in the wind. One handler pats a cheek, the way a father checks if a child is finding sleep. He is not. A soldier with a coin at his neck takes belts and knives and anything that can be used twice. He hands a small copper charm to the boy beside you without meeting his eyes. The boy hides it like food. Hannibal passes like a rumour, close enough that men straighten on instinct. far enough that you see him only as a shape with a horse's breath. The shape pauses for a count, as if measuring the camp, then moves on. You do not need speeches. No one has lung for speeches. And even if there were lung, there is no patience for promises that don't build a bridge or light a fire. It is enough to know the man who started this thing is still shaped like a man in front of you, and not only a story behind you. The light arrives the way a debt collector arrives, prepared to wait until you answer the door. It lifts the edges of the snow into definition and points out all the places your feet can go wrong. A guide stamps along the ledge above, testing with a pole, and calls out in a language that isn't yours. The man behind him translates into another that still isn't yours. The man behind that one throws his head to the left, and that's the order you understand. You stand because standing is what comes next. Your knees protest because yesterday hasn't gone anywhere. When the trumpet finally finds the note that means move, you fall into a line that has walked itself into you. The path narrows and you narrow with it. The mountain's teeth are at your feet now. Blue ice under thin snow. Places where air pretends to be ground until a man puts his weight on it and falls through. Stones polished by 100 boots into treachery. You look where the boot in front of you goes and then put your own there. You stop looking at the view, because views are for people not currently betting their bones on friction. The first slip of the day belongs to a mule. You hear it rather than see it. The sudden clatter of hoof on rock. The weird silence between the first skid and the loss of balance. Then the weighty, sick sound of something large choosing the wrong side of gravity. Men don't shout when that happens anymore. The air saves its noise for avalanches and arguments. The handler stands where the mule was and looks down for a long breath, then steps back into the line and takes the lead rope of the next animal as if the mountain just asked for a coin and he gave it one. You pass under a fin of rock where icicles hang like spears too lazy to fall. The air there is colder, as if the stone hoards it. When you breathe, the inside of your mouth goes numb for 3 heartbeats and then stings. Your beard collects frost until you feel the tug at your skin when you turn your head. You chew a little snow, and it tastes like smoke because everything tastes like smoke now. You swallow against the small pain and let your tongue find the cracked place on your lip and worry it because you can't stop yourself from testing hurts. The column halts because everything halts sometimes, even when there's no reason you can see. You brace a hand on the rock and let the world take your weight for a count. You look down and see the night's camp already smudged into the same white as everything else. Farther off you see the line of the path you will take after this path, and the shadow of a ridge beyond that. The realization arrives not as a thought, but as a sensation. The day doesn't have an end that will feel like an end. The dawn didn't begin anything except seeing. The truth rides up your spine and settles behind your eyes. It's not over. The idea is not new. The feeling is. You had been saving a part of yourself for the moment the mountain admitted it was done with you. The mountain is not interested in your savings. The halt breaks. You move again. You step over a crack where the snow caved in and the water below pretends to be asleep. You duck under a branch that must have ridden down on a slide and found religion here. Your shoulders brush the white and bring down a small drift into your collar. The shock is immediate and childish. You hiss, then laugh once because you remember another life where a friend dumped a bucket over your head in a courtyard, and you chased him around a column until you both were scolded by a woman who couldn't keep a straight face. The laugh shakes loose something in your chest that had gone sticky. It hurts in a useful way. By mid-morning, the light has sharpened enough to make you squint. The snow throws it back up at you until your eyes water and then crust. A man in front of you wraps a strip of cloth around his brow and cheekbones to make a visor against the glare. You do the same, and the world darkens into relief that lets your pupils stop screaming. The cold finds the new gap at your neck immediately, and you swear softly in words that don't belong to any god. You pass a place where the path has slumped, and men ahead are carving steps with the edges of their shields, bringing them down like blunt axes and stamping the scarred snow into something that will hold a boot for the half second it takes to move the other foot. You join the rhythm, lift, strike, stamp, until your shoulders ache and the strap along your ribs feels like it's arguing for a different owner. When the guides signal the line forward, each man tests the steps he didn't make and trusts the man who did. A shield skitters down the slope anyway, flips twice, and vanishes. No one goes after it. A hand reaches back and gives you a pull you don't ask for but take. You nod, and he nods, and you both pretend it didn't matter. Somewhere behind you, someone begins to hum. Not a song, not really. A thread of sound that gives the lungs something to do with air, besides measure how little there is. It passes along the line and breaks apart and appears again, as if some part of the army has decided, without instructions, that exhaling should be organised. You let it in. Your breath remembers the shape and follows it. The boy behind you catches it late and then keeps it going longer than you do. Near midday, the column spills onto a small shoulder where the wind has been kind, and the sun, to your surprise, remembers how to warm. Men stop as if a string were cut. No one is told to rest. The ground makes the decision. You fold yourself down and sit with your back against a rock that drinks light and gives a fraction back through your armour. It's a poor exchange, and you take it gladly. Someone produces a pot that has survived more bad ideas than most men, and a thumb of fat wrapped in a bit of hide. Snow goes in. Fat goes in. Smoke happens. The smell walks the camp like a familiar. You don't love it, and you welcome it anyway. You don't have food to contribute. You contribute work. You fetch snow in your bowl until your hands stop arguing about it, and then start again. You hold your palm above the flame to feel heat that is not yours and will not be yours for long. The boy holds the pot's handle with a bit of leather so the metal doesn't tell the skin its lessons. When the broth is a colour that means not water, it makes a slow circuit. The sip you take is the smallest one you could manage that still counts. It goes down like something that remembers being alive, sits in your stomach like a visitor who doesn't plan to help clean up. And still you say yes when the pot comes around again. Rest is not sleep. You stare at the snow and see movement where there is none, because your eyes want to keep measuring. You count the notches in your spear shaft without finishing the number. You pick a flake of soot off your glove and then lose it. You lean your head back and let the rock have the weight for a while. For 3 breaths, it's almost enough to make you forget the next ridge. On the 4th breath, you look up and the ridge is still there. The guides point with their poles and make lines in the air that you translate into orders you can obey. Up along that fault, across the tongue where the slide took the path, into the notch where the wind has carved the cornice into a lip that will break if you are careless with it. A man asks if there is a down after the notch. The guide looks at him the way men look at questions they don't have language for. He shrugs. His shrug means yes, and then an up, and then another, and then something else. You stand because the shrug is true. Afternoon is a different shade of cold, brighter, thinner, a blade instead of a weight. The wind returns, not in tantrums, but in steady pressure that pushes a man toward one side of the path and asks if he is ready to argue. You bend into it until your back aches and your teeth click. The line compresses as the path narrows against a wall of rock cut by ice into steps only a goat would brag about. One of the elephants, one of the few, appears below on a lower traverse with its handler walking a hand on the skin and a prayer on his lip. The beast moves like an old fort, slow, deliberate, the sort of thing that defeats itself if it tries to hurry. For a moment the column forgets its own feet and watches that impossible animal be exactly alive enough. When it clears the outcrop and the handler pats its shoulder as if congratulating a friend on finishing a story, a pocket of breath releases along the line like a laugh that decided not to be heard. You crest a turn that your legs had nominated as the top because they were finished believing otherwise, and the mountains lay themselves out in a grammar you can't pretend to read. The light makes a road where there is none, and your brain is so hungry for roads it puts your feet on it, even though your eyes know better. It's not over. The words are not spoken. They don't have to be. They're in the way men do the math now, pace and slope, and who will carry the boy's pack an hour from now when the boy can't. They're in the way you accept the remainder and move it to tomorrow's column in your head because you don't own enough numbers for today. You begin the descent that isn't a descent, all knife edge and slick stone where snow has run thin. Down means forward into more up. Your knees curl into themselves, and your thighs announce a list of complaints in an order you can't fix. One of the Iberians mutters that he thought the worst was behind you 3 days ago. The Gaul with the broken nose says the worst is always behind you. That's why it gets to be called that. You almost smile. Almost is a good word up here. It means your mouth remembered how. A squaw walks across the ridgeline like a man who owns the place and drops a veil that turns the next 40 paces into rumour. The guides tighten the line, rope the worst section, and put men on either side to pull and push as if the army were a cart that can't be allowed to drift. You feel hands on your elbow that you don't know. They are strong and tired and don't ask. You let them. You give your shoulder to someone else when the path says, it will take a man if it isn't given something better to hold. By late light, the cold finds new places to live inside your clothes. It settles in the small of your back, where sweat cooled hours ago. It waits along your spine for any gap between cloak and cuff. Your breath is shorter now, not because the air has less, but because you have less to trade for it. The boy stumbles and rights himself with a curse that mispronounces a god's name. The god, if he is here, doesn't correct him. When the halt comes for real, when the trumpet says the sound that means this is the place whether you like it or not, you stand for a count longer than you need, because sitting will mean standing again, and you want to be sure that bargain is still one you can keep. Then you fold down, knees first, then hips, then the rest, and begin the evening work. Snow must be packed. Edges must be made. Corpses must be arranged into the walls that keep air from doing what air does. You do the things that have started to feel like prayer, because they are the only actions you repeat that reward you with a degree or two of mercy. You find 2 bodies, last night's losses, still pliant enough to seat where they'll do some goods. You angle them the way the Gaul taught you, forward at the shoulders, knees up to catch snow, hands tucked so they don't snag. As if you are tucking a child into a bed you would never choose for any child. You place your shield at a tilt to bridge a gap. The boy wedges a broken board into the crust to make a floor his hip won't cut through. Someone brings the stump of a fire to life long enough to offer each of you a mouthful of heat disguised as a sip. You do not talk about what you saw in the light. You don't say "not over," because saying it doesn't change any slope. You strip the words for parts and use the parts for useful things. A more careful knot, a tighter angle on the wall, the decision to keep your boots on even though your feet beg. When the first star peeks through and the wind leans in to see who you are tonight, you tuck your face into your cloak, place your shoulder against a dead man's shoulder, and let the day leave you without your permission. The thought you carry down with you into the narrow sleep is not comfort and not surrender. It is the simple, exhausted plan for what you will do when the light returns and tells you again what you already know. You will rise because rising is what comes after lying down. You will count what's left and make it into shelter. You will put your feet where someone else's feet didn't fall. And when the morning opens and shows you more mountain, you will believe it. Not because you like the truth, but because it is the only map that hasn't betrayed you. You wake to silence that isn't empty. It's a silence made of breathing. Fewer breaths than yesterday, slower, uneven. The sound of survival when it's down to its last handful of players. You lie still for a while, eyes closed, trying to tell if it's morning yet. The light behind your eyelids has that faint blue tint that means the sun is thinking about rising but hasn't made up its mind. You could open your eyes, but that would make the world real again, and real hasn't been kind lately. So you wait another breath, and then another, counting them, making sure they still happen. The cold doesn't surprise you anymore. It doesn't come at you like an enemy. It sits inside you like a debt you've learned to pay slowly. Every inch of your body has its own version of pain. The dull ache in your knees. The sharp sting where your fingers cracked days ago. The strange numbness that feels safer than warmth. You move one hand toward your face and touch the edge of your cloak. The fabric is stiff, frozen into shape. You push it down an inch and feel air rush in like water through a crack in a dam. You pull it back immediately. You're not ready for morning yet. Eventually you open your eyes. The sky above is the colour of old bone. The snow glows faintly, reflecting a light that isn't quite there. Around you, the camp looks smaller, thinner, like it's been erased at the edges. You count shapes, 1, 2, 3, and stop because you don't want to finish. The boy who used to sleep beside you is still there, curled in on himself, cloak pulled tight. His shoulders rise and fall barely. You watch long enough to be sure, and then you let your own breath go. The wall of bodies you built the night before has changed. The ones in the middle have sagged, their joints locked in the wrong directions, their forms soft under new snow. You adjust one with your boot, just enough to keep it from tipping into the camp. You don't bother brushing off the frost that's built up along your armour. The metal is part of you now. You've slept in it too long to remember what skin feels like without it. You push yourself upright. The movement sends a crackle of frozen fabric through the air. Your breath fogs immediately. You sit for a moment, elbows on knees, hands hanging between them, staring at the ground. It's hard to tell where the snow ends and your exhaustion begins. The fire pit near you is just a black ring now. The coal's long dead. A faint outline of warmth that no longer exists. Someone tried to start it again during the night. You can see the marks of a knife where they scraped the last bit of char for kindling. It didn't work. Nothing works for long up here. You look at your hands. The fingertips are grey at the edges, almost translucent. The nails have gone a strange yellow colour. You press one thumb into the palm of the other hand and wait for the blood to come back. It does, slowly, reluctantly. You rub them together, the skin rough like bark. When you touch your face, the stubbled air feels sharp enough to cut. You think about shaving for a moment and then laugh. A dry, broken sound that startles even you. You haven't seen your own reflection in weeks. You wouldn't recognise the man in it if you did. Around you, men begin to wake. There aren't many left, not enough to make the kind of noise an army should make. The sound now is more like a field after harvest. Quiet, full of what's missing. Someone groans softly, pulling themselves free from the snow that's drifted over their legs. Another coughs, deep and wet, a sound that doesn't belong in a living body. The boy stirs beside you and opens his eyes halfway. He looks at you, says nothing, then pulls the cloak tighter around his neck. You nod once. There's no need for words. You both understand what it means to still be here. You stand, your knees locking for a moment before they decide to cooperate. The world tilts slightly before it steadies. You stamp your feet, and the sound is small and lonely. Your boots are brittle, the leather cracked, the soles hard as stone. You feel the shape of every rock beneath them. You roll your shoulders, and the armour protests with a groan that sounds like it comes from both of you. You pull the strap tighter across your chest and look toward the horizon. The sky has changed from bone to ash, a promise that the sun will rise whether or not you ask it to. Smoke still lingers from last night's fires, thin grey threads twisting upward and disappearing into the wind. It smells like everything you've been breathing for days. Smoke, sweat, and the faint sweetness of burnt fat. You take a deep breath anyway, and the air freezes in your throat. It hurts, but you do it again. The pain feels honest, cleaner somehow than the dull ache everywhere else. One of the officers walks past, or what's left of him. His armour is blackened from the smoke, his cloak patched in so many places it looks like a map of failure. He doesn't speak, just gestures toward the ridge ahead, the direction you're supposed to move when the sun climbs high enough. You nod, even though he doesn't see it. The plan is always the same. Up, then down, then up again, until the mountain decides to let you go. You bend down and start packing your things. There isn't much left to pack. A bit of dried meat, frozen so solid you could use it as a weapon. A piece of rope. The small knife you stole from a dead man 3 nights ago. The charm from the boy's friend who didn't make it past the last pass. You touch it once through your cloak for luck, even though luck hasn't been real since Spain. You tie your pack closed with fingers that don't want to bend and sling it over your shoulder. The weight feels right. It reminds you you're still carrying something. Before leaving, you look at the camp one last time. The snow has covered most of it, smoothing over the bodies, hiding the shapes of the men who didn't wake. In another hour, it'll look like no one was ever here. You think about burying 1 or 2, But the ground's too hard, and you've learned that the mountain buries its own. You take one step toward the path and stop. The boy is still sitting, staring at the snow in front of him. You walk back, put a hand on his shoulder. Up, you say quietly. He doesn't move at first, but then he nods and stands. You help him tighten his cloak. It feels like something a father might do if the world hadn't already taken that sort of feeling from you. When you start walking, your legs feel hollow. Every step sinks a little into the crust before finding something solid. The air bites harder than before, sharper, cleaner. The wind has shifted direction again, carrying with it the echo of a sound you can't place. Maybe a rock slide far away. Maybe just the mountain sighing. The line of survivors moves ahead of you, thin and uneven. No drums, no banners, no songs. Just the quiet shuffle of boots on snow, and the occasional clink of metal. The sun finally breaks over the ridge. It's weak and pale, but it still makes you squint. The light reflects off the snow, and blinds you for a moment. You stop, lift a hand to shield your eyes, and see the path stretching ahead. Narrow, winding, endless. For a second you imagine it leading home. You know it doesn't. But you hold on to the thought anyway. Hope doesn't have to be true to be useful. You keep walking. The boy follows close behind. Every so often you glance back to make sure he's still there. He always is. The sound of his breathing mixes with yours. A small rhythm that keeps time against the emptiness. The others are scattered along the slope, each man his own island of endurance. No one talks. Conversation feels like a thing from another life. By midday, you stop to rest near a cluster of rocks that block the wind. You sit with your back against one, feeling the stones cold press through your armour. The boy collapses beside you, his breath coming in sharp gasps. You hand him a piece of frozen meat. He tries to bite it and gives up, holding it between his hands to thaw. You chew yours slowly, breaking it down with your molars until it's soft enough to swallow. It tastes like salt and leather. You don't care. It's something to do. You stare at the snow in front of you and notice the way it sparkles under the light. It's beautiful in a cruel way. The same thing that's killing you can still look harmless. You reach out and run a glove through it, watching the crystals scatter and catch the sun. You wonder how many men have looked at the same sight and thought the same thing before dying. You shake your head and stand. There's still daylight left, and daylight means moving. As you climb higher, the wind picks up again. It howls through the gaps in the rocks, carrying fine snow that stings your face. You pull your cloak tighter and keep your head down. The boy slips once, and you grab his arm before he falls. He nods in thanks, too tired to speak. You keep moving. The sound of your boots and the wind are the only things left in the world. When night finally comes, it does so without warning. One moment the world is grey, the next it's black. You stop where you stand because there's nowhere better. The survivors gather in small groups, their shapes barely visible in the dark. Someone manages to light a single fire. The flame flickers weakly, its light swallowed by the cold. You sit close enough to feel it on your hands but not your face. The smoke smells the same as always. The boy curls up beside you and falls asleep almost instantly. You sit awake longer, staring into the fire until your vision blurs. You think about Carthage again. Not the heat this time, but the shadows. The cool stone of a courtyard at dusk. The sound of water in a fountain. the quiet between voices. You imagine walking there barefoot, the ground warm under your feet, the smell of olive oil and bread in the air. You imagine sitting down and never standing up again. The thought is so real that for a moment you forget where you are. The wind reminds you soon enough. You look at the boy, his face half hidden under the cloak. He's breathing evenly, his lips pale but steady. You reach over and adjust the edge of his blanket so it covers his shoulder. Your hand stays there a moment longer than it needs to. You can feel the faint heat through the fabric. You tell yourself that's enough. Heat, breath, the living, that's what's left. You close your eyes. Sleep comes slowly as it always does, not as a mercy, but as a negotiation. You drift in and out, your mind sliding between the mountain and the sea, between cold and warmth, between what's gone and what's still holding on. You dream, but the dreams aren't clear anymore. They're just flashes. A face, a voice, the sound of waves breaking somewhere that isn't real. When you wake again, the fire is out. The boy is still breathing. The world hasn't changed. You're still on the mountain. You're still alive. And that somehow feels like both a victory and a punishment. You stretch your arms, feel the familiar ache return, and stand. The air is sharp, clean, unforgiving. The cold hasn't killed you yet, but it's taken pieces. You can feel the gaps where they used to be. Maybe it's better that way. You're lighter now, easier to carry. You look toward the horizon. The first trace of light is already there, brushing the edges of the world. Another dawn, another climb. You adjust your cloak, tighten your grip on your pack, and take a deep breath. The cold fills you again, but it feels different now. It doesn't belong to the mountain anymore. It belongs to you. You take the first step forward. The boy follows. Behind you, the camp disappears under snow. Ahead of you, the path curves out of sight. The cold took almost everything. Warmth, comfort, laughter, names. But it left the one thing it couldn't touch. Movement. You're still walking. That's all that matters. And in this place, that's what survival means.